Good evening, everyone. It's 7 p.m., January 17th. Mr. Clerk, I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to pass it over to the mayor at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Clerk, we're reporting out a closed session at this time. We have one item, 4.1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the one item of council reporting out of closed session this evening, the motion is to receive the report and that confidential direction to staff be confirmed.
Thank you. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Gilliland, second by Councillor Gallo. Comments? Quarter vote?
Recorded vote has been requested for the only item of council reporting out of closed session. Councillor Gallo, how do you vote? Councillor Gallo votes yes. Councillor Thompson? Councillor Thompson votes yes. Councillor Weiss?
Yes.
Councillor Gartner is not on. Councillor Gilliland?
Yes.
Councillor Gilliland votes yes. Mayor Maracus?
Yes.
And Councillor Kim? Councillor Kim votes yes. The motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Affirmative bylaw. Need someone to move that. Councillor Gilliland, second. Councillor Weiss. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Thompson, Councillor Kim, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. We're adjourned. I'll pass chair back. Mr. Chair, Councillor Weiss.
Thank you, Mayor Maracus. First, we'll do the land acknowledgement. The town of Aurora acknowledges that the Anishinaabe lands on which we live and work are the traditional treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island, as well as many other nations whose presence here continues to this day. As the closest First Nation community to Aurora, we recognize the special relationship the Chippewas have with the land and waters of this territory. They are the water protectors and environmental stewards of these lands, and as a municipality, we join them in these responsibilities. We further acknowledge that Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and Chippewas, recognized through Treaty Number 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. So let's move to the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Councillor Gallo, seconded. Councillor Thompson. Any comments, questions on the agenda? All in favor? Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Any declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Hearing none. Thank you. We have no community presentations this evening, but we do have a delegation. And the delegation is 6.1, Steve Hall and John Reich from the Aurora Barbarians Rugby Football Club regarding the development of a new all-weather field at Shepherd's Bush and collaboration. Welcome, Steve and John. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, Town of Aurora staff, and all those watching online. Thanks for having us. Council has always been very supportive of recognizing the importance of sports excellence, activities, and participation in Aurora. We thank you for allowing us to present a proposal that we think will support the future growth of sports participation in the town. I am the co-president of the Aurora Barbarians. I've been a 30-year Aurora resident and a 40-year member of the club. With me today is Keith Scott, our Director of Community Relations and Junior Development for the club. Also with me is John Reich, the chair of our planning committee, a longtime past president of the club, and a community recognition award recipient for outstanding contributions to the town of Aurora in the past. Also our coaches and parents that have decided to come. So I will turn over the podium to John Reich. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve, and good evening, councillors, and thank you for allowing us to share what we hope will be a lead into a partnership between the town and our club to enhance the inventory of multi-use sport fields in Aurora and promote the game of rugby. There's presently only one rugby pitch in the town's inventory, and that's the field at Shepherd's Bush, which is also marked for football and soccer. St. Max Colby's turf facility is also marked for rugby and used by the school's rugby program. We're grateful that the town's partnership with the York Catholic Board has allowed us to permit this field. We also use other green spaces at St. Max and the Renaissance High School at Bathurst and Bloomington for our programs. We've previously circulated our presentation. I hope you've all received it. Still need the first page. Yes, because on it, we picture our handsome young men, our bright-eyed junior boys and girls, and our talented, very talented young ladies. Slide. Rugby's been present in Aurora for over 50 years, starting with the York County Rugby Club in the 1970s, progressing to the Aurora Rugby Club in 1995, and for the last 20 plus years, the Aurora Barbarians. The Barbarians is a club for all with a welcoming environment for boys and girls, men and women from ages 6 to 60 and all body types and skill sets. There's always a place to start and progress in rugby. Pre-COVID, we had an active membership of over 400. This most recent year, we were just over 300 after COVID, and we're delighted to see our pre-registration numbers for 2023 rising back up to those earlier levels. We're proud to call Aurora home, and we'll always strive to build our club from within town boundaries while welcoming any participant looking for a healthy, inclusive environment to learn, enjoy, and excel at the great sport of rugby. Together with Rugby Ontario, we've also been partners and shareholders at Fletcher's Fields, a rugby complex at Woodbine and 19th Avenue in York Region. In 2021, we agreed with a decision by Rugby Ontario to decentralize rugby from Fletcher's, and we accepted an unsolicited offer from the town of Markham to acquire our property at Fletcher's Fields. The proceeds from this disposition will allow the Barbarians to pursue a regional approach to rugby development and invest in our home right here in Rugby. We're looking for an opportunity to partner with the town to enhance its inventory of sports fields and give the residents more opportunity to participate in rugby activities. Slide, please. After some preliminary discussions with Parks and Rec, our idea is to build and co-fund a second turf field with floodlights at Shepherd's Bush, marked for rugby and other activities as deemed useful by the town. In addition, we would pay for a new green building to replace the existing washroom and storage structure that would provide expanded washroom facilities and change rooms for men and women, something the town doesn't currently have at any of its outside fields. There would also be a private space for the Barbarians, which would act as our clubhouse and administrative office for year-round use. Is that me? Using the new facility and with access to the existing turf field, we would give back our current field allocations in other locations and expand our programs at Shepherd's Bush. We would continue to pay standard user fees on the existing and the new turf. Adding a second full-size turf field in one location with change rooms would be a game changer for generating sport tourism opportunities for all field sports, including, of course, rugby festivals and tournaments. Okay. Although the proceeds from the disposition of Fletcher's Fields is not yet certain, we propose to partner with the town and will make a capital contribution to the new turf commensurate with our projected field use, up to $1 million. We would also fund the construction and erection of a new building structure using advanced green and modular techniques to provide public washrooms, men's and women's change rooms, and a meeting space for permitting by the town. We would envision a long-term arrangement where the club would have access to the turf fields and adjacent areas at Shepherd's Bush on an agreed-to schedule and, of course, subject to permit fees.
Excuse me, Mr. Wright, can I ask for a waiver of procedure bylaws so we can extend the time? Councillor Gallo, Councillor Thompson, all in favor? Thank you. Proceed.
So I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Slide. Okay, this is the aerial view that shows the existing setup as well as the new turf. We are aware that the existing setup at Shepherd's Bush provides for 2 intermediate soccer fields as well as 2 mini fields. If we were to expand the turf sidelines for the rugby pitch by 15 meters, we'd be able to alternatively accommodate rugby, a full-size soccer field, the 2 intermediate fields that we'd be covering over in turf, as well as the 3 mini fields as illustrated. Parks and Rec has shared with us the turf field with lights provides 2.5 times the capacity of grass. We're excited to add this capacity to the town sports inventory. This is our concept drawing for the clubhouse envisioned in situ at Shepherd's Bush. men's and women's washrooms on the ground floor, together with 3 change rooms each for women and men. The upper level has 600 square feet of public meeting space and a 600 square foot viewing deck, as well as 900 square feet of private space for the club to showcase our history and act as our administrative office. We noted earlier in the presentation that this plan addresses recommendations from the town's 2016 Parks and Rec Master Plan. Won't get into those details, but they're there for your future reference. I guess that exhausts my time, but I'm certainly prepared to receive any questions from the council and mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. First of all, can I have a motion to receive the delegation? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Kim, all in favor? Good. Right, sorry. Yeah, some comments, questions. Who has them? Yes. Mayor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the delegate, John, thank you very much for coming this evening, everyone. Thank you very much. It's quite an exciting proposal, I believe. It seems like you guys have done a lot of work when you go through the presentation, and what you guys have done is very detailed. I think it's something that definitely we should be investigating. So I think under new business, we'll have a motion to investigate, ask staff to investigate this and bring back a report to council with costs and recommendations, and we can move forward at that point. Obviously, we need to make sure that from a financial standpoint, everything makes sense for our residents. But I think it's exciting when we can provide more opportunities for our youth in our community to be able to excel in sports. We know how much sports means in our community. We're trying to, increase our portfolio when it comes to sports right across, not just in our town, but how we're positioned in the region and across the GTHA. So I think something like this would go a long way cementing Aurora's legacy when it comes to rugby as well. So thank you very much for coming for this presentation. And I'm looking forward to seeing a report once we do hopefully approve that in new business from staff, and we can move forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And, we're delighted to be able to come into the town with investment capital to help the town build its inventory of assets.
It's always great when there's money coming in from somewhere else as well. So I'm not gonna lie about that. That's a good thing. So thank you.
Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say a big thanks for keeping rugby strong in Aurora and the Barbarians. They are a staple of our community. I know, at least all of my 19 years, how often you've come and hoped for more rugby fields for your players. This is one of the most exciting proposals that I've had come before council. And we'll just have to work on it and see what happens. But it is, it's a wow to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. And anybody looking for additional information, we're here every day. So we're here to provide information as you may need it.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. And you probably hear repeatedly a thank you, because not many people come to the podium with $1 million and say, let's make a deal. So obviously we're very happy to hear that. There's obviously going to be some details to be worked out and some ebb and flows and to figure out how this deal can work best for both the sports community as well as the town at large. The only one thing, and I think you spoke about the 2 fields or the three or maybe 4 fields that will be removed and replaced with this one. I'm sure somebody will be doing a study on the benefits of and figuring out what the comparison between the loss of those fields and the addition of this field. So once we get a motion forward, I'll be in support of moving it forward and have those kind of discussions and many others. So thank you very much for coming out.
Thank
and
you,
proposing
Councillor.
this and to choose Aurora for this, because you probably could have gone anywhere.
No, we're only coming here.
Well, it's good to hear.
And Councillor Gallo, thank you. And our objective is to make sure that every field sport has got more capacity as a result of this. It's not just for rugby. We need a home, but we're here to support sport broadly in this community.
Thank you. Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you very much. Pretty much echo around the room. A lot of things. You just answered one of my questions about the multi-sport use. So I just want to reiterate that as well. Obviously, rugby's a priority here based on your presentation, your organization, and your generous proposal. I can tell you've put a lot of work on this, and obviously I've spoken with staff, and you've pointed out their master plan in 2016. I know we're in review right now, so I'm sure some of those things will slightly change, but you are working with staff, so that's great. I guess the question I have for you is based on, obviously you're very organized, how, if this were to go through and everything's successful, how soon are you enabling yourselves to put the shovel in the ground?
Thank you, Councillor Gilliland. One of our issues is how deeply into the proceeds from the sale of our existing field is Revenue Canada going to dig. We are a not-for-profit company that is shareholder of a not-for-profit company. So we believe the distribution will be without tax. We're also could be subject to a capital gains. That's just a long way of saying that there are gross proceeds. There'll be net after-tax proceeds. We may not have this settled for another year or so, but we'd be ready to put shovel in the ground in 2024 if the city is willing. I've got a lot of experience in modular construction. What we're hoping to be able to bring to the site is a modular building that includes the change rooms, washrooms, and shared community facility so that we can build offsite and get it to the site as quickly as it can be prepared. We're looking at replacing the existing structure that's there with something that's more complete and useful for the town.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. And when you say community space, I gather, so if you do have tournaments, there's places where people could, eat and have a potluck, or, I don't know, maybe you'll have a mini kitchen of some sort, of bar, so people could perhaps or license it, and watch a rugby match. I don't know.
Steve, can you make
Thinking outside the box, maybe. I don't know.
The bar proposal.
Who knows who you're going to attract from around the world, but watching a game and having a beverage doesn't sound so bad. I guess one last question. Was there ever any intention to making it modifiable to have a dome for the winter use as well, or no?
There's always that opportunity. It's not contemplated in this proposal, obviously, but especially if we were to make the turf pad bigger than a standard rugby field to incorporate some of those intermediate soccer fields, the 9v9 soccer fields that the town covets and we think should be there. That would provide some additional space to put a dome covering a full-size field. Domes that get put up and taken down are really expensive, but anything's possible. If there's a lottery win sometime in the next 18 months, we'll put it up.
All right. Thank you so much.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I won't echo the comments too much. Obviously, it's a wonderful proposal. We look forward to getting the details and continuing the conversation. I echo the fact that it's not often that community groups such as yourself come to the podium with some funding as well, so that we can look at it from a partnership perspective. And I'm certainly going to be fully supportive of it. Just a quick question through you. In the slide presentation, you speak about this type of arrangement being successful in other communities. You mentioned Brampton and Burlington and Oakville and Markham. Are you able to comment a little bit about that type of arrangement? And if not, I would be interested perhaps down the road if you would provide some information about how it works with those other municipalities as well, just for some learnings.
I think in each of those cases, what's happened is that the rugby clubs have gone with their own delegation to share, the perspective on community sport and where rugby fits in. Oakville is a very interesting situation where they've got a 3-field complex that's leased to them by the town with a definitive time frame, and they meet certain metrics that the town requires in terms of number of participants. They would be a club with about 800 members. But again, I don't want to say like Aurora, but Aurora appreciates the efforts of the community clubs to provide activities for the residents. And I think those communities as well of, they may be a little bit further ahead of us in terms of, what can, how the town and the club can work together. But we can provide any details that you'd like, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. And just, what a wonderful way to start off this term with this presentation. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, JR. I want to thank you very much. And you, Steve, for the work that you've done in this community for many, many years and the work that you intend on doing in the future. So thanks very much for your presentation. It was excellent.
Wonderful. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, councillors. Thanks very much. Appreciate the extra time as well.
Can I get a motion to receive the delegation? Pardon? Great. Sorry, we've done that. So thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Now move to the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to receive item 7.1 for information? Councillor Gilliland, Councillor Thompson. You don't need to leave. Are there any comments or questions on the item? Mayor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And obviously, there's been a lot going on in regards to from the province side, whether it's Bill 23, also with the amendments to the Greenbelt Act and also the Oak Ridges Moraine Act. At the region, we did pass the recommendations that came from our staff at the region, which is essentially that we don't support the amendments that the province has made to the Greenbelt Act and to the Oak Ridges Moraine Act. I mean, essentially, whatever you think about the housing crisis, we all agree that we need to build more houses, but it shouldn't come to the detriment of the environment. And so I think a lot of us are standing up and saying to the province that the amendments that they made to open up the Greenbelt to allow for development on parts of the Greenbelt is unacceptable. It shouldn't be happening. And I believe that us as a town, we need to stand with the region. And I think we need to send that message back to the province as well, that the town of Aurora does not find it acceptable. So, Mr. Chair, through you, if I could, I'd like to put an amendment to add a clause that the town of Aurora support the region's position in regards to the amendments to the Greenbelt Act and the Oak Ridges Moraine Act.
Can I have a seconder? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Any questions, comments? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Could you just highlight, I did read through it and are you recommending the entire document? There's a lot in here. To you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor, you're correct. There are a lot, but I mean, essentially, if I just boil it down to one issue, it's the fact that the region does not support essentially or opposes the amendments that the province made, and so essentially, that's why I've just whittled it down to a very simple that we support the position of York Region with respect to the Greenbelt and the Oak Ridges Moraine Lands. If we wanted to change it, I mean, I don't mind, and I would love to see it even stronger. If we want to put down that the town of Aurora opposes the provincial amendments to the Greenbelt Act and to the Oak Ridges Moraine Act, and not necessarily tie it to the decision that York Region made, I have no problem with that, because I think that we need to send that message to the province that that we don't agree with the fact that they've opened up parts of the Greenbelt for development, and as well as the Oak Ridges Moraine. So I think it's very vital that we make that statement.
Councillor Geller, are you going to ask for an amendment or?
Just clarification. So on attachment one, there basically it's the highlighted, the bold points that are in that letter that we're pretty much saying we agree with. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, Councilor Gallo, could you just say that one more time? Sorry, I didn't catch.
Attachment one, the letter from York Region to the Deputy Minister and all the bolded points that are there.
Sorry, Councilor Gallo, I'm trying to pull up attachment one. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, the whole explanation is in there and the region's thoughts. I mean, obviously on the fact that the land, essentially it's the land's not needed to build housing. That there through our existing urban boundary, there's more than enough land for us to continue building houses and to meet what the province's objectives are from a housing perspective. And so there's no need for those amendments to the Greenbelt to open up those portions within the Greenbelt. Like I said, if we want to make it more specific to just say the town of Aurora opposes it, great. Or we can just leave it as we support York Region's position.
Councilor Gallo?
I'm okay with it. Actually, when I read it, I said, this is fantastic. I'm really glad they're doing this. And it's just, to me, when the amendment, I was having difficulty understanding because they're not very specific in terms of what they're saying in terms of a regular motion, but everything that's in here, I agree with. So I think it's a good thing that we support it.
Fine, by you. Okay. Any others? Councilor Thompson.
Thank you. Yes, just to bring some clarity, and I follow along with Councilor Gallo. If you look at the attachment one, for example, the region is highlighting specific sections and then speaks to it. So for example, when they talk about the proposed Greenbelt land, the removals in Markham, with regards to the Little Rouge corridor, they talk about it should not be contemplating this because of, the removal of these Greenbelt lands in the vital north-south ecological corridor, or with regards to the expansion of the South Lake Hospital and exploring different. So to Councilor Gallo's points, yes, my take on this is that we're supporting the region's explanations as well as their objections to those components within it. I too am fine either way, whether we want to go straight put forward our own opinions with regards to the bills and our opposition to it, or support the York Region's position. Either way, I'm comfortable moving forward because at the end of the day, I would hope we all oppose what was put on the table.
Thank you. Councilor Gilliam.
Thank you. I'm fine as is, having read the document, and also I do like the fact whenever I'm supporting these things when there is a solution that's been presented. And that's something that I do see in this document where it has provided adequate alternatives for not using the part of the Greenbelt. And so for that reason, I'm happy with the way the motion is written.
Thank you. Councilor Gartner, you had your hand up. Have you removed it, or are you still ready to make some comments?
Thank you. I'm going between eScribe and the meeting screen. I am happy with the way it is as well. I'm wondering though if it would add more weight if there is an extra clause, or even if we send in a separate motion, because we are on the Oak Ridges Moraine. And not that our area at this time is going to be affected by that, but we have a pretty big stake in this as well for the future. I don't know, Mr. Mayor, I guess through you to you, did you get the feeling from regional council whether it would add weight if municipalities send in as well or add on their own to this particular, to what's going down from the region?
Mayor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through to Councilor Gardner. Councilor, ultimately, the discussion at the region was that if individual local councils wanted to put something as well forward, it would be beneficial if we kind of teamed up, so to say, and we supported the position of the region and sent that message to the province as well. Now, what we could do is we could add a clause that says that we send this resolution to the Premier and to the Minister of Municipal Affairs so that they have a full understanding. So it's not just on our record, but also they get documentation from the town of Aurora that this is what the position that we've taken, that we support York Region's position in regards to the amendments to the Greenbelt Act and Oak Ridges Moraine Act. And I think that sends a message that we stand with all of York Region.
Thank you. Do you think it'd be possible between now and next week whether you could check with other municipalities to see what they may have sent, and whether we want to perhaps copy what they or add to it, or just get a feeling what other municipalities have done?
Mayor Marcus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Councillor, absolutely. I will check with my colleagues and see if any of them have done the same, or if they've done any additional items or steps. And at that time, I'll let council know next week. And if we need to possibly add something or maybe do something separately, we can do it at that time.
Thank you very much. I mean, we all want to be as strong as we can in this matter. So thank you for looking into that.
Thank you. Second time, Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. And I said I support this, and I do. I don't want to be hypocritical, because there is a statement, and I'll read it in here, that I don't necessarily agree with, just because and it's that it has to do with the region's official plan and for site-specific special provisions areas that increase maximum building heights and density in Aurora, Markham, and Vaughan. I think we know which one it is, Leslie and Wellington. I didn't agree with that. It's in the York Region plan. It's not in our plan. It does, although, buttress the concept of this in terms of there's enough housing. So, bit of a mixed bag there. I agree what we're doing. I don't necessarily specifically agree with that application, even though it helps this argument.
Mayor Marcus? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Just to the amendment that's on the floor, when I look at it in e-scribe, the amendment is worded as the town of Aurora supports the position of York Region with respect to the Greenbelt Act and Oak Ridges Moraine Act. I'd like to see that reflect the report itself and say to the with respect to the proposed amendments to the Greenbelt Act and Oak Ridges Moraine Act.
Okay.
I assume that's what the mayor wanted.
Can we have that correction made? Mayor Marcus, comment?
And through your chair, maybe we'll ask Mr. Ramuno, are they still proposed, or did they go through? So that's why I'm just saying, Councillor, from a language standpoint, I don't know if I'm not sure at this point if we can still say proposed.
Mr. Ramuno?
Sorry.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I think they've been enacted, but we can confirm that.
Of course.
The reason why I bring it up is that I want to link it to what York Region has done. The report, the letter, all speaks to the proposed amendments. And so I'm just trying to draw a clear line between the two so that there's no confusion. Now, if you want to put proposed in brackets, that's fine. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a realization that it's in reference to this particular report.
Proposed amendments. So you want that adjusted to be the proposed amendments? Counselor Thompson, you
Friendly amendment?
second that? Yeah. We second that? Yeah. Okay. So let me call the vote on the amendment. Oh, Mayor Marcus, are you going to have another?
Yes, my second time,
One
right?
more?
Yeah. No, the amendment was a friendly amendment, I believe, Mr. Chair, was it not?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still, yeah. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just gonna, Councilor Gallo, absolutely, and I think that's why I wanted to word this amendment or our position based on, that's why it says with respect to the Greenbelt Act and the Oak Ridges Marine Act. I agree with you. That's why I didn't want anything about the OP aspect of it, because 100%, we disagree with it. We sent out a motion from here, from this council, saying we disagree with it and that we strongly disagree with it. So that's why this is worded just about those two aspects of the position of York Region, not necessarily the OP. So 100% agree with you on that. So I just wanted to let you know. That's why I specifically worded it this way. Okay. And Mr. Chair, that's all I have. So hopefully we can send this message to the province.
Councilor Gardner, second time. Can't hear you.
My apology. This has definitely been passed. So why? I mean, how can we use the term proposed?
Your question is use the word proposed.
Well, it's not
You're-
proposed.
you're-
It's already been passed by the province. So I'm not sure. Councillor Thompson, you raised the point and I didn't quite hear where it ended up. Are you
Councillor
okay?
Thompson. Councillor Thompson.
For somebody, so that's fine. At the end of the day, what we're saying is that we're supporting the region's position put forward in the report that speak to the proposed amendments. And so that's why I'm
Okay.
using that terminology so that it's clear what we're in reference to, because those are the points indicated within that letter. I completely understand the point that this ship has sailed and these proposed amendments have come into force, but let's be clear about what we're supporting and reinforcing, and which is really, as Councillor Gallo indicated, that attachment 1, the letter that went to the ministry.
Thank you very much. It's very clear to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me call a vote then on the amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Now can I have a vote on the motion? The main motion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. The next item are the advisory committee meetings, and we have no minutes to look at. So we'll go right to 9. And I'd like to have a motion to put the 9.1 on the floor. Can I get a motion for that? Councillor Gilliland, seconder. Councillor Thompson. So we're going to have a discussion of this item, a committee structure review and updated policy for ad hoc advisory committees and local boards. Comments? Discussion? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I must say you're doing very well for your first chair of a meeting. And I'm sorry, I am making it a little bit harder for you, but thank you. I'm wondering why the Heritage Advisory Committee and the Accessibility Advisory Committee are not included in this list.
I'll refer that to the clerk, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair. It's because they're statutory advisory committees, Councillor. So in the recommendation, we have the discretionary advisory committees, but the statutory advisory committees, council doesn't need to motion to create them because they have to be created by provincial law.
Thank you. Great explanation.
Thank you. Mayor Maracus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and should have another amendment for you guys on this. So I'd like to put forward an amendment that that the policy for ad hoc advisory committees and local boards be amended to change the responsibility of chairing meetings from citizen members to members of council. The reason is I think that there's, I know that we tried it out last term. I guess if we can get a seconder.
Councillor Gillen.
And then I can speak to it.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the reason is that, and if we don't agree, the meetings are when they're chaired by a member of council. I think we get off and running right away because council's chairing the meetings. And I think it allows also the citizen members to do why they sign up is to actually be very active within the items instead of having to worry about chairing the meetings. And I think some of them sometimes as well, you saw it if you went and attended some of the meetings, some of them possibly did have some angst in putting their name forward to possibly chair the meetings. And so I think that's why I think that there's some value in us maybe doing it. Now, I know that there's some that we still continue. This doesn't preclude, Mr. Clerk, us possibly having a citizen member chair, because I know in accessibility, we still do usually. So maybe we need to word this slightly different if we can, because I know that one we usually do get a citizen member to chair that committee. And we always have, even when this was before, when we had it structured as council chairing. So maybe if we can make that exception in there. And I don't know how it was worded previously before we did make the change. I think that would be prudent on us to do that and to make sure that we have that in there so we can continue to do that from the Accessibility Advisory Committee. But beyond that, I think it's after seeing the way things transpired last term, I just think that it would make for more efficient and smoother meetings.
Can I get a
Thank you, Mr.
second
Chair.
on the amendment? Edwin, sorry. Great. Questions, comments about the amendment? Councillor Gillen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Maracus, for the amendment. I would support that. I did find that at times, some of the citizen members might have been a little bit apprehensive, having been in that situation. And again, I think the idea is that it is about the citizen members' feedback, and we're there to direct the flow of the meeting and be there to listen and recommend that feedback to council as well. I just think it gives a nice flow out of the gate. That doesn't, again, preclude us from, in a situation, we want to waive procedural bylaw and it does pass the baton to a citizen member, then so be it. But in the meantime, I do support what's on the floor.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Is there a clause already in the existing procedures on who chairs? I thought I read something, but I'm just trying to figure out where. 8.0?
Are you asking?
What we're changing from the wording from the current to the proposed change?
I'll refer that to the clerk, but my recollection of it is that there's no provision in there for it's elected out of the group, as opposed to now we're saying that this is going to be an election. It's going to be elected of a chair who's a member of council.
That's correct. Right now, it's anybody on the committee, council members or citizen members could be elected chair. And this would change the chairing section to only members of council. Now, if I could, Mr. Chair, the mayor did had a brief discussion with the mayor. He did say that to add except for the Accessibility Advisory Committee. So we could put that on the end, and that would make the Accessibility Advisory Committee able to be chaired by a citizen member. All other committees would be member of council.
Is that amendment fine by you, Mayor Maracus, and the second? Councillor Gillen? Okay. So I'll make that change.
Okay. And then it's still Councillor Gallo's.
Councillor Gallo?
Okay. I'm still on bit of on the fence. I think I agree that the first choice should be a counselor, but I think that door should still be open. Let's say you have a really good member of a committee that wants to be a chair. And let's see why, if it's one of my committees, why I wouldn't be able to say, go for it and do it. I think that option should still be there. Although the first, it should go to the counselors first, but it's up to the discretion, I think, of the counselor.
So you're suggesting you leave the option open, as Councillor Gillen said, that they can waive the procedural bylaw and allow a non-council member to chair.
Can they? I don't think you can.
That was her suggestion, right?
Oh.
According to this amendment, no, that's not the case.
I think it should be up to the discretion of the council on the
Mayor
committee.
Marcus, do you want to comment on that, or do you want to change the amendment?
I was just saying, Councillor Gallo through Mr. Chair, citizen member, I don't think this, and I could be wrong, maybe the clerk will look at me and say you're wrong, Mr. Mayor, but I don't believe that this would preclude a citizen member being vice chair.
Right.
They could, there's nothing, Mr. Clerk, is there anything in this? No. So yeah, they could be vice chair. They could be elected as vice chair. I just think that it allows for them, that gives them an opportunity to learn, which is, I think, is what the objective was for all of us when we made this change to begin with, was to give them that opportunity to learn procedure, learn how to chair a meeting. I think being a vice chair allows you to be close to the chair, which is a council member, and to learn from that council member. And so I think that's still a good opportunity for the citizen members. Speaking to, as you said, is if there's someone there that might excel at it, that's maybe an opportunity for them to do something beyond just being one of the members of the committees. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Gallo?
As long as that's incorporated in the procedures, then that's fine. Because right now, I think it's 8.1.1 that dictates how we choose, and as long as it's in there and that vice chair, at the discretion of the chair, can still chair, that's okay. That's the open door. That's perfectly fine.
To the clerk, is that quite possible to include that?
Absolutely. Well, through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. We'll make sure that's clear.
Councillor Hume.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also had similar experience with others that, especially in the first part of the term when citizen chairs start out at, the first 2 or 3 meetings were pretty clunky, to say the least, but it's still a good learning experience for them. However, I was always on the side of allowing citizens to chair, but I don't think being the chair necessarily symbolizes that you're more engaged or you're participating more. I think just going back a little bit, I'm just thinking through this because I wasn't expecting this, but our role has always been to kind of listen, provide guidance in the background, and allow citizens to take leadership, take ownership of the committee. And I thought that having a council chair might prevent that from a subliminal perspective or subconscious perspective from allowing that to happen. But upon reflection, I don't think that's the case. And I think the concern that I have is similar to Councillor Gallo, but I think having that vice chair does allow for that opening to have that citizen vice chair chair, if the opportunity presents themselves. So I'll be in favor of the amendment, and it allows the committees to start, hitting the ground running. without the clunky transition. And yeah, I think it allows for a smoother meeting. So I'm in favor. Thank you.
Counselor Thompson.
Thank you. I'm in favor of it too. I just have one clarifying question through you to the clerk. The motion speaks to advisory committees. Within the initial report itself, we've identified the advisory committees as such, but the Heritage Advisory Committee is not considered an advisory committee. In this report, it's considered a statutory committee. So my preference would be that it too would be included in this amendment. So through you to the clerk, do we need to provide some further direction to state that this amendment would also apply to the Heritage Advisory Committee, even though we've classified it as a statutory one? And if so, that would be my preference as well, or not. The
Mr.
clerk can. No, because we have other statutory ones. I don't want to get too confusing here and stuff because there's a whole bunch of statutory ones, including the accessibility. We've now drawn an exception for the accessibility, which is a statutory one. So that's why I'm asking for this clarification on the definition of advisory versus statutory and how this plays out.
Mr. Durant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the wording of the report, we didn't mean to draw a distinction between advisory committee and statutory committee. We consider them the same. One is just brought about by provincial law. The other one is at the discretions of council. So I confirm that no additional wording is required. The heritage, not accessibility, would be chaired by a member of council.
Okay,
Counselor?
except for the vast accessibility.
Except for
That's fine.
accessibility, which is included in the amendment.
And so I guess I'm in support of it. I think, from my experience on committees as well, while we do have procedural rules to follow, we've always kept it fairly loose in my experience to, facilitate discussion and engagement. And so, I mean, there's lots of ways you can always pass the chair and you can start off that way and then pass the chair to a citizen member that you feel that would like an opportunity to lead the meeting. I don't see any reason for not having some flexibility throughout it as well. But as a general sense, I do agree that it would be good to have a member of council guide the meeting from a direction and as well as just from a continuity perspective. So I'll be in support of the motion.
Thank you. Counselor Gartner.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you've noticed, my hand's been up and down on this constantly. So where I'm at this point is with respect to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Now, we've had Mr. Lanchuk on, John Lanchuk on the committee for I don't know how many years. We keep allowing him to be on. I think at some point he will not be, which may leave a situation where you've got a committee with all new people who have really no idea how to run a meeting. And it can be very uncomfortable. So I'm wondering why we just wouldn't put this to all committees. I think that some committees just need a helping hand to start off with, and we don't know in advance which committees those will be. So I would just like this to apply to all of our committees, including Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Are you suggesting an amendment?
I am, thank you.
Microphone. Mayor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to say, Councillor, I mean, great points. So the only reason I suggested that is because of the strong chair that was there, and we still haven't received any applications. We don't know who we're appointing to these things. That's why I put that forward. But if everyone feels comfortable in moving forward and making it all of them and not having an exception for that one, I'm fine with that as well. We can remove that. Absolutely.
Councilor Gartner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would appreciate that.
So a friendly amendment to remove? Put it on here and remove. Okay. we get that changed on the screen? Yeah, before I call the vote, let me ask a question through the clerk. Does this change the dynamic of our terms of reference in terms of who votes on these committee vis-a-vis chair does or does not have a vote?
Oh, the chair.
To you, Mr. Chair, no, every member has a vote.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
I just saw it on the screen it's behind me, but are we going to redo that section 8.11 and also reflect the vice chair? And we don't need to do that now. Well, obviously by next week, we'll see the full thing.
Mr. Durant.
As long as that's understood and next week we see the full thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair. 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks.
On 31st. But no, we will, you're right. There's a whole section of that we'll have to look at. But I think we'll certainly listen to council's intent tonight and then draft something to be provided to council prior to the council meeting on the 31st.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, are we ready to vote on the amendment then? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Yeah, go back to the main motion as amended. Mayor Marcus. Oh, Councillor Gartner. Your hand's up.
It's supposed to be down, sorry.
Okay. Councillor Kim.
Thank you. I'd like to also put in an amendment that the term for citizen members appointed under the policy be for a maximum of 2 years.
Could you repeat that, please?
That I'd like to change the term for citizen members appointed under the policy for a maximum of 2 years.
Can I get a seconder on the amendment? The amendment is that the term is being changed from 4 to 2 years for citizen members of a committee. That's the amendment, the proposal. Comments? Yeah, that's right.
I mean, for myself, it's always been my objective since I was a disengaged resident at one point in time to have as many new citizens be engaged. And we've started along that path. It's not accelerating at the rate that I would have hoped, but I'm finding that the best success that we have in engaging residents into our community is through the involvement in our committee, advisory committees. So that's my first reason for considering this amendment. And I think another reason for that is that sometimes having to serve for 4 years is actually intimidating, because for those people who've never served in a town like municipal advisory committee, for them, it's a pretty big deal. It's a big responsibility, and they think they're not ready for that. They have to have, so much credentials, but it's really not. It's, anyone can be a contributing member of the advisory committee. And I think lowering the duration to 2 years takes away from that intimidation factor of having to serve for 4 years. And it doesn't deter current advisory committee members from being reelected and serving again. So nothing could change, but there is a window for those who are serving or those who are applying to say, hey, you know what, I do have an out after 2 years if it's not what I have anticipated. And lastly, last term, we changed the duration of council serving on advisory committees or boards to 2 years. We rotated because we wanted that diversification and change of experience. So why not align citizen members to the same cycle that council members are on? So for all those reasons, I thought, this would be a good amendment. So for me, by all means, I'm not stuck on it. I'm open to discussion, but I think when I think about the pros and cons of it, I don't see any negatives because it doesn't prevent anyone from serving 4 years because in the end, we choose the members, right? So
Thank you.
with that, look forward to hearing everyone else's thoughts.
Thank you. Councillor Gillen.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the clerk, did you find that we had a lot of open vacancies in the committees last term because they couldn't fulfill the duties in the 4 years? Did you find that that was something that was of concern or an issue?
Mr. Durant.
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, I don't recall that being a concern or an issue last term.
Thank you. And I did notice that you did have a survey and you asked all the members on various committees to get some feedback based on their experience. And through that, I believe they were in favor of not making really any changes to the policy or the way it was structured. Is that correct generally?
Mr. Durant.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would say that's correct generally. It seemed that most members that were advisory committee members last term were satisfied with their experience.
Thank you. And is there any verbal comments that might have been part of the survey that we aren't being presented today that might be pertinent in this situation?
Mr. Durant.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, there are not.
Thank you. I'm not opposed or completely opposed to the idea. My only concern is with a lot of these committees, not all of them run every month. Some of them are every 2 months. Generally, maybe around Christmas time, we don't have committee meetings. We may not have one for June, July, and August for another 3 months. And some committees may feel like they don't get in a groove to actually feel like they're making a difference or contribution if they only had 2 years to serve. So that would be kind of my only concern. I'm looking at it on both sides. So if there was, community advisory or heritage, whatever it is, and, they had this mission in mind that they really wanted to make a difference in that sector and felt like they were just getting their teeth in. And then all of a sudden it changes. And, then we're starting with a whole brand new bunch of people with a learning curve again. And there's a lot to learn with some of these committees, especially with the accessibility, all the guidelines, following the act, same with the Heritage Committee as well. It is a bit of a learning curve, I would think, for the first few months to kind of wrap your head around everything and kind of learn how the scoring works and whatnot. And it could actually do the opposite, but it's not that I'm totally against the idea. I like the principle of where you're going. I just don't know if it's going to achieve what your goal is.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'm open to supporting it and trying it. As Councillor Kim indicated, there's nothing to preclude the same members who were on the first 2 years of the committee from staying on and completing a second 2-year term so that they would have those 4 years. At the end of the day, that would be council's prerogative or decision. But I think we all see, and over the years, a lot of different applicants come in and there is some disappointment that they don't get an opportunity to serve. It's unfortunate, but it's always great to see that there are so many people willing to put their name forward and be part of the advisory committees. And it would be great if there were more opportunities for them to be able to get involved. And so for that reason alone, I'm happy to support the motion. And at the end of the day, after 2 years, I guess we can have further conversations about whether or not that continuity is important for the work that those committees are doing. And if so, then you carry on with the same members. But, I think the one thing that we don't know, and we really don't know, is that when we go out and advertise, the people that are willing to make that 4-year commitment put their name forward. And those are the ones that we decide upon. But there may be lots of residents who choose not to put their name forward because they just aren't able at that time to make that 4-year commitment, but they could have made a 2-year commitment. And so it'll be interesting to see if this motion passes, whether or not we get more applicants or, different residents come out who are willing to put their name forward because they can foresee the next 2 years and are willing to make that commitment to the town. They just wouldn't have been able to make a 4-year commitment. May not change things, but it may. But I think it's a reasonable initiative to try to see if we can give more people opportunities to serve the community.
Councillor Gillen? Yeah. Okay. No other questions? Councillor Gallo?
Thank you. I'm open to thinking about this. It's obviously something new, and to me, it's a relatively significant change. And obviously, we don't have to decide tonight. So I'll take my time thinking about this and understanding the pros and cons of it. So I don't mind moving it forward as a concept, but taking some time to better understand the impact of that between now and council.
Thank you. Councillor Gillen?
Thank you. And I just wanted to kind of put out there, also property standards as well. That's part of the committees that we are electing. And again, another learning curve. I'm just looking at it as more as gaining momentum and really getting a full understanding of, what you're trying to wrap your head around, be passionate about for those 4 years, and that council support and property standards is also another, that's a big can of worms to learn. It's a lot of work. And I don't know. I don't know if it's like worth reevaluating in a couple of years to see if that's something we want to do, but not so sure I want to go ahead with the amendment right away. That's just kind of where my headspace is at, because, I'm a like mind of just me as a counselor. I think back in the day, it was like it went from a 2-year term to a 3-year term to a 4-year term. And the reason why is because it took us, we wanted to feel like we had some sense of accomplishment within that 4 years to say we were able to get this achieved and this done. And we could be taking away a little bit of that from some people who might want to serve on a committee for 4 years and feel that they're getting that same sense of accomplishment over that period of time. So for me, that's where I stand.
Councillor Kim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And all the reasons that we've heard around the table, they're all valid. They're good points. No one can know until 2 years down the road or 4 years or down the road whether this was a good idea or not. But no, we're council. We can make those changes if necessary. But again, if things are working well, and it takes, Councillor Gilliland's point is correct, and that's in some of the more intensive committees, there is a learning curve, and it does take time to gain that momentum, and I certainly agree with that. And after the 2 years are over, if during that time, if those committees are working well and the recommendation is to continue, then we have that option to as council to continue that. So nothing prevents the same continuity and that momentum. Nothing prevents that momentum from stopping, should we so choose. So, but I'm thankful for everyone to want to consider it for council. I still have a couple of weeks, and I know this is a big change and or a big potential change, and we only have a few minutes to even think about it and comment. So certainly it's wise to take a couple of weeks to kind of ponder some more, but let's consider it. Thank you.
Mayor Maracus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to add one thing. I mean, I'm open to the idea. And as was mentioned, everything around the table, I think everything that everyone has said is correct. I mean, but at the end of the day, also I thought one thing that wasn't mentioned is that we see how many applications come in for all these committees. And so sometimes there's people that we think that, man, we would really like to see this resident as part of this committee, and they just don't essentially get on that committee. And this is an opportunity maybe that they don't have to wait 4 years. Maybe we look at making a change at that 2-year point and bringing that person in if they reapply. And so there's those opportunities, I think. And as Councillor Kim mentioned, I think is pretty important is the fact that if we feel that we have a strong committee, that we continue with them and we wouldn't make any changes. So ultimately it's up to us sitting around the table. I think this just provides, as was mentioned, an opportunity within a 2-year period for maybe some new people to maybe put their name forward. Some people might move to the town and all of a sudden want to get involved. And instead of waiting, they have an opportunity to put their name in. I can tell you numerous times that people have come to me and they've sat down with me, residents in my office, and they wanted to get involved in the town. They said, I'd love to be part of a committee. And I said, well, you have to wait till after the election. And so this provides that, at least that 2-year point, that halfway point where maybe some new people can get involved and be part of the town, part of our committees, part of helping make our community how great it is. So I'm open to the idea. I'm open to looking into it. I'll vote in favor of it tonight and kind of think about it over the next 2 weeks and have some discussions with the clerk and then make a final decision at council. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Just if I may, the principle of this basically is we want more engagement with people. I'm a little concerned. I'll be eager to talk to the clerk as well about how that process happens. Are we having people on for 2 years or are we having them on for maybe 4? So I think the whole process of the selection and how it's identified to people need to be solved. And I'm looking forward to those kinds of conversations in the next 2 weeks. So let me call a vote on this second amendment, which has to do with the 2 years only because we've done the other one. So let me call the vote on this amendment that is having the one that's here. The term for citizen members are appointed under this policy for a maximum of 2 years. Councillor Gilliland, is it second time? Second time, Councillor?
Thank you. I just wanted clarity on the way it's written because, we have been talking about, let's see how this works, comments or, it doesn't preclude us from allowing it to continue. And the language saying it's like you cannot be a member for a maximum 2 years. So it's like it's saying once you've done your 2 years, you cannot reapply, you can't do whatever. So what is really the intent of the motion, Mr. Councillor Kim? Like, are you suggesting we, after 2 years, that we tender for reapplication, but yet you can reapply for the same position if you really want to? Like, because the way it's written right now means it's like a clean slate.
Councillor Kim.
I think through you, Mr. Chair, I think if you remove for a maximum of, and just be policy be for 2 years, would that satisfy the flexibility that Councillor Gilliland is rightfully inquiring about?
Councillor Gilliland, the question's to you about, does that satisfy your question?
Mr. Clerk, would that encompass what I'm trying to achieve here? And would the current members have the opportunity to reapply? Would it be clear?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. Current members could always reapply. Council has waived the policy before in terms of consecutive terms served. But if that makes it clear, then absolutely, that I think that the amendment or removing maximum wouldn't cause any issues.
Thank you. And so I just want to make sure it doesn't get confused with the consecutive terms, because I know in the past we've had to waive procedural, for consecutive or agree, because I think the way it's written is not to be consecutive, or is it not more than 2 consecutive? I'm just trying to understand. So now we changing the consecutive means is now 2 years versus the 4 years, because now we're changing what that means for the term.
Mr. John?
Through you, Mr. Chair, right now, I believe the policy is written, the term is written in council terms. So this amendment wouldn't, I think if we kept the term council term in there, it wouldn't change anything. It would just, you could technically serve maybe 4 terms of council, or not terms, four consecutive terms of an advisory committee member, but which would be equate to 2 council terms, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Okay, and this does not this does not affect the boards. Okay. Thanks.
Any other comments? So let me call the vote on this amendment. All in favor? Sorry, we're going to be removing maximum. Councillor Kim, is that satisfied? Call a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Kim, you have the floor on the main motion as amended.
I have no further comments.
Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just a few questions. In section 12, the new section 12, electronic participation, recording, broadcasting, and or live streaming. I like this and I agree with it. The only question is, where is it? 12.5. The way it's worded, is it understood that with this and or broadcast and or live stream that there's a choice whether it's broadcast or not? My preference is that they're all broadcast. Well, what is the definition of broadcast? We record and we send it out later. Live stream is while it's happening, it's being sent out. And to this, I don't know who's going to be deciding whether we record and send out later, or it's happening now, committee's happening now, log on to YouTube, it's happening now. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Duran.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So this particular section 12 is straight out of the town's procedure bylaw or council's procedure bylaw. And the intent is that that we would live stream everything. We started doing that just at the start of the pandemic when we did everything on Zoom. And that, as long as there's no closed session aspects or personal information aspects, we would prefer to live stream everything. In case technology is down, that's when we would record and put on our YouTube channel later. So it's meant to just give us a couple outs in terms of technology being an issue.
Councillor Gal.
Okay, so that's the intent, only if something goes wrong. Otherwise, we are live streaming all committees, all board as well. Committee of Adjustment, all of them.
Mr. Duran.
The only one I can think of under the policy that, or at least that council appoints, is the library board. I'd like to actually speak with the library and see if we can't get something going there. But the rest of them under the policy, yes, except for the Aurora Appeal Tribunal. There tends to be some personal information there that we don't want to broadcast publicly.
Councillor Gal.
So library and cultural center, you'd have some pushback, I think. I think you'd have some pushback. But anyways, other than those two, all the other ones will be live stream. Okay. The only other thing, and I don't know if I want to put an amendment, maybe just plant a seed and food for thought, unless the clerk tells me that if I put something forward at council, it's too difficult to adapt. I doubt it, but I'm just curious and was thinking of pulling out from one of the committees, I can't remember the name, to have an active transportation committee reestablished. I believe, from my personal opinion, I'd love to hear everyone else's, that it's missing, and it's something that I believe we should dedicate a little more time and effort towards. Obviously, it requires another council member to be on it, which means a little more work for someone. I'm happy to be on it if that's the case, if no one else is interested. But I wanted to plant that seed to everyone. I don't necessarily want to move a motion tonight, but just to think about it. And I don't think it'd be too difficult at council to add that on the fly, but I wanted you to all think about it between now and then. So
you don't want to add it to this. You just want a food for thought for the council meeting.
Yeah, Most
And this
likely
is
I
for an,
will, but at least to give everyone an opportunity between now and council, just to think about it.
So an advisory committee for active transportation,
transportation, yeah.
specific to active
And
transportation.
I'm open to like an additional component of traffic safety to it, but let's put some thought to it before. I don't want to do it tonight, but just for everyone to think about it.
Fair enough. Councillor Gilliland.
Sorry, I thought you were putting on, you're making amendment. You're not.
Sure.
Oh, so yeah, the amendment that I wanted to make, which was rather small, it was an amendment last term that we did midterm for chair rotation after 1 year. I think it makes sense to change that too.
Is that a friendly amendment?
We'd have to change it anyways.
Mr. Duran.
Through Mr. Chair, there's a few committees with just one counselor, but there are some with two. So if it's just council chair, but I think it'd be proper if that's.
You can just reappoint the same counselor. We may change committees after 2 years, maybe not. I don't know, Mr. Mayor, on that, if you want to comment, but
Could be
it-
amendment,
we
yeah.
just,
Because the policy does say that it's 1 year right now, so it would be an amendment unless everyone agreed right here that.
unless it's
To
just.
change it to a 2-year chairing term.
Yeah, and it also allows if there are two counselors on the same committee together that if they remain on that committee, then they can reverse the roles and then they can do whatever.
Mr. Duran, your recommendation on that?
I would, if the councilor's putting forward the amendment, I would, an amendment that's in order, I would look for a seconder, Mr. Chair. Unless there's full agreement around the table to just make it two, but I think the safest way is to do it properly, look for a seconder and have a proper amendment.
Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. I would like to second that.
So comments and questions on this amendment? Hearing none. Do we need to restate the amendment so everyone knows what the amendment's about? Sure. On the vote for this amendment. I'll call a vote for this amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I still have the floor.
You do.
Thank you. I have another amendment that I'm not so sure staff's really going to like too much. But this is something that I have felt that really needs attention. I don't know if there's like a time limit that's addressed with it, so it doesn't create a lot of extra time, but I really do think there needs to be some sort of new business section back on the agenda. Often that was probably the largest complaint that I had received from the citizens on the committee, is that if there is something of importance at that time that they want to bring up and it's timely, it was almost way too late to address much later on. I understand they can go to the chair and ask that we put it on, but sometimes things are born at a new business that wouldn't happen if we didn't have it. And, you know, as long as we're responsible and respectful of time and kind of say, you know, till I think it's 2 hours we're allowed the meeting. And then after that, it's a waive of procedure bylaw. Just very clear about that, so it doesn't ramble on. But I'd really like to see new business back.
So your amendment is about adding new business on to
The agenda.
committees, the agendas. Mr. Durant.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the policy doesn't preclude new business or anything, so I don't know if it necessarily needs to be amendment to the policy, which council is discussing tonight. We can take it as direction and add new business. If I may just talk about why we removed it.
Certainly.
It It's difficult because, you know, it's not, we don't need to suppress ideas from the community, that's for sure. But it's difficult when we don't have the right, we don't know what's going to come in new business and then we don't have the right staff there to speak to it. And it becomes just some telephone and what was said. And I mean, fortunately, streaming the meetings will help with these things. Now we can refer to a staff member, say this was brought up last night, take a look at the video. So that is why we removed it in the past. But like I said, happy to take direction on that and just add it back onto the agendas if that's council's will.
Councillor Gill?
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I also do think it really helps when, you know, a council member is back in the chair as well to help facilitate the flow and generate the information and the feedback from the citizens, which is really the intent of the committees from the community, is to get their feedback. So appreciate that.
Councillor Gartner, hand up.
I was just going to be in support of that. Thank you.
That's a second. Eric?
No, I wasn't on this. Sorry, not on this one. I'm on the original motion.
Oh, Councillor Thompson. Taking direction.
Speaking to it, then I guess, and perhaps between now and the 31st, just in terms of how we receive the advisory committee minutes, if a new motion or a new business entails a new motion that gets approved at the committee, we don't get any details. We don't get any note or comment, so to speak, about it. And then it may involve costs and or resources. And so perhaps the clerk can give some thought then, do we need to change our processes now? Because all we have been doing up to this point is just adopting the minutes to those meetings based on recommendations and reports that are accessible to us. But yet if something comes out of new business that is a new motion that may have been discussed at the committee, other members of council who don't sit on that committee may not have the details or information around it. And then when we approve the minutes, it may move that initiative forward. So perhaps between now and 2 weeks from now, the clerk can give some thought about, do we need to change our process a little bit? Or are there going to be some parameters around new businesses where things can be brought up, but perhaps then there are some reports that get generated. However it is, I'm not opposed to the idea of new business, but I know that was the issue in the past when we had new business on it, is that there was no information to council when those reports came. And yet here it was, we were debating the merits of approving motions that may or may not have a financial impact on the organization. And so I think if I remember correctly, that's one of the reasons why it got deleted, but happy to revisit it. But that would be the question I'd have in a couple of weeks, is how are we going to deal with those situations?
Mr. Duran?
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. That's I agree with those concerns. I think you know, we would discourage motions, quite frankly, in new business. I think it's an idea or it's a time for members of the public or members of the committee to you know, address different ideas, provide different ideas, those sorts of things. And then we might look to the counselor liaison on the committee, the chair even, to if it's an idea that is worth following, to put a notice of motion forward at council, rather than you know, have passing motions in new business. That makes it difficult. We would definitely discourage those at motions in new business at committees.
Councillor Gallo?
I don't see it that way, because we changed the way committees operated. Before, committees would make decisions, pass motions, even within the agenda, and it would come straight to council and we would be bound by them. That's not the case anymore. If you look at the way that the structure, the committees are structured, they're just advising staff. They're not advising council. It's through staff, and then staff comes to us. There's a stop there. And the same will take place with new business. Because if that's the case, then any agenda item that a committee passes within the agenda and passes a motion within the agenda, that doesn't mean council has to adopt that. That's not the case. That's not what's happening. So the same would be true for other business. We changed the way the structure of the committees operate. So I don't think that's actually, it's not happening, and it shouldn't happen in new business either, even under the current terms. It just won't happen, because they're advising staff. The minutes come to us, but staff filter through that, and then you know, if something comes out of that, then it comes to us. If there's a direct motion, if there's a direct resolution to us, it would be that council members, like you just said, would have to put forward a notice of motion, and direct council. Committee members don't direct council in any way right now. That's the way the structure is. So I'm in agreement with adding that, because it opens up the door to other discussions. And it doesn't bound council to anything, in my view.
Mr. John? Okay. So where are we? The motion is amended on the screen. So let me call a vote. When we see Councillor Gardner. Call for a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Nine point two. Secondary suites and residential homes, buildings, inspection strategies and proposed policies.
May I ask, Mr. Chair, if we're going to be taking a health break?
30 minutes at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I get a mover and a seconder? Nine point two. Councillor Kim. Motion. Seconder. Mayor Marcus. Comments? Discussion? Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. And I'm going to go into eScribe. I think everybody's seen enough of my face. Let me just see if I can do it. Okay. Thank you. 9.2, which is following on a motion passed by council July 12th. I have some questions for clarification. My apology to Mr. Jean. Is Mr. Jean at the table? Or is it Mr.
Mr.
Muno?
John here.
Mr. Chair,
Ramuno.
Bill Jean is online, so he's able to take any questions as
Great.
well.
Thank you. I do have some questions starting on page 1. I need some clarification. Creation of new secondary suites must comply with the building code and the electrical safety code, but existing secondary suites only need to comply with the fire code. So would that mean that all of the complaints that we've received about secondary suites, when they are inspected, they are only inspected with respect to the Ontario Fire Code and not the building code, which is quite different than I think what we have in our secondary suite bylaw?
Mr. Jean.
Mr. Chair, any new created secondary suites would have to comply with the Ontario Building Code. And any suites that are existing that may have existed or grandfathered would have to comply with the Ontario Fire Code, which includes any residential units that are existing. And
Thank you. Thank you. So we're talking about grandfathered I can't remember what date it is.
it's July of 1995 under the Resident Rights Act, which basically grandfathered any secondary suites.
So all of the secondary suites that we might have in any part of town that were built before that, we're not talking about those now. We're talking about new, meaning that's where I got confused, new, post 1995.
That's correct, Councillor. Also, with regards to any new ones that are created, let's say one was created 5 years ago. Again, they would, once they get the building permit and they comply with the Ontario Building Code, they would then revert to the fire code if there was any issues, such as if somebody's smoke alarm was removed and there was a complaint, then the fire, Central York Fire Services would issue any orders to have them reinstall the fire alarm, the
Thank
smoke
you.
alarm.
Councilor Gardner.
Thank you. There's a much larger question, but I'm going to leave that till the end. The building division has developed a strategy to attempt to inspect and close out any outstanding building permits for secondary suites. So I'm not going to assume, but I'm going to ask. So if somebody has applied for a building permit, that the department would it come in and inspect that building?
Yeah, that's correct.
So can you please speak to about the from the discussion of my motion in July, the problem of not being able to get into those suites?
Through you, Mr. Chair, based on the statistics that I've compiled over the last 10 years, the success rate of entering a suite or gaining voluntary compliance to a suite is very, very high. I can't remember the exact percentage. I worked it out. It's like almost like 94%
Right.
of complaints. We do have basically 94% compliance in getting in. So, and reviewing the content of the building to see if there is truly a secondary suite. In the case where the other 6% where we cannot gain access, I think one of the proposals we've made is that we would be proactive and attempt to get a search warrant through the courts to gain compliance. Again, that procedure may be difficult as I said in the report because of Justice of the Peace would not grant us a search warrant based on a complaint. It would have to be based on something more substantial, such as possibly somebody we provide the JP evidence that it's being advertised as a secondary suite in that respect.
Councilor Gardner.
Thank you. So the reason that I'm been talking to you and emailing all these months is I'll give you one of the examples is about a home that has a secondary suite with the complaint was that there wasn't a secondary exit egress in that house. And I believe that staff tried to gain entrance. I know that staff tried to gain entrance and it was refused. We're definitely talking about a safety issue here. So at the July meeting, I was suggesting we know who owns the home. It would be, in my view, a simple matter to be in touch with the owner and say that there was possibly a safety issue and building had to inspect, and say when building had to inspect, possibly give some options and gain entrance that way, because going through the courts is, I mean, as you said, it's just difficult. And anyway, could you just comment on that? Because as far as I know, that situation has not been solved.
Mr. Jean.
Through you again, Mr. Chair, I believe that one that we dealt with, we have gained access to the building. Our building inspectors have been persistent. We have gained access because the tenant had moved, and as of this date, that secondary unit is compliant with the building code. They had performed all the necessary building code upgrades, and as I had ascertained previously, our success rate in gaining access to most complaints is I believe 94%. So it is pretty pretty good, pretty high. So so the issue of gaining compliance or gaining access to inspect is very good for us. That based on the statistics that I've looked at over the past 10 years.
And I'm very glad
That's
to
okay.
hear that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very glad to hear that. But in this case, it took, I don't know when this is now compliant, but it's been ongoing, was ongoing for over 4 years before building was able to get there and do this. So there has to be a solution for those kinds of issues, because those kinds of issues are the kinds of issues that are going to possibly result in ultimate safety and liability for the town. So I don't see a plan on doing that, although I thought my plan was pretty good about getting in touch with the owner and arranging a time. Because am I correct? If there is a safety issue, we do have a right, or a possible safety issue, we do have a right to get into a home?
Mr. G?
Through you again, Mr. Chair. One of our strategies that we're proposing in the report is when a building permit is issued for a secondary suite, that we conduct a pre-construction meeting with the homeowner or the applicant on site. And the purpose of this meeting would be to specifically address the main fire safety issues that main fire safety issues that would help the building or the applicant ensuring that the building is safe. And particularly that we would stress that the smoke alarms be in place immediately, and the inspector would also be able to inspect the egress facilities, such as the stairs and any egress windows. So having that pre-construction meeting, I think, would address the major life safety concerns that could take place. There are obviously many other issues, such as furnace and fire separations, but generally smoke alarms and egress is the two main life safety issues that need to be addressed.
Thank you. I also think that boxing in the stairs to allow a certain amount of time for residents in lower levels to escape is probably on that list. Perhaps not at the top, but I think certainly on that list. So it's just, we're talking about two different things. We're talking about the easy thing, which is if somebody comes and applies for a building permit, then we have them. We have their attention. What I'm more concerned about is where we have a situation that is not under our radar with a building permit, and then somebody makes a complaint and we can't get into the house. And I'm because we've had so many emails, I'm just going to read one from June 29th. From you. We will proactively pursue complaints on secondary suites created without a permit. And that was also including a search warrant and a second. And then, so we have this where you have an undertaking to proactively pursue complaints. And I think you were saying that usually it doesn't take too long to get in when a complaint's made. So we're talking about the hardcore complaints that are not easy to solve. And so could you please tell me how the department is going to handle this kind of a complaint? The ones without a permit where somebody has complained about the safety.
Mr. G?
Through again, Mr. Chair. Again, the ones where we absolutely cannot gain access to the suite. At that point, we would attempt to obtain a search warrant to mandatorily make them enter into the building. But as I said earlier, the the odds or the chances of us getting a successful search warrant based on strictly a neighbor complaint, I think would be very, very low, slim or none.
Okay.
So those would be, definitely those would be problems that we would have. But again, on those types of complaints, we again make attempts 2, 3, 4 times to try to get access. But again, if it's unsuccessful, our hands are basically tied.
Okay, I don't think there's anything wrong with my strategy unless you can tell me about getting in touch with the owner to gain entrance instead of going through that process that you're saying is quite problematic. Over the past 10 months, we've been talking about the online list, which has the name 2-unit house registration. We've been talking about that online list, and I was looking at the chart that you have in the report. And I can't reconcile the numbers. So for example, in 2015, the online chart that there were six registration numbers that were given permits. On this chart, it says here that there were 2. And I don't, Mr. John, I can't, are the, when we give a registration number on a list, is that the same as the finalized permit number?
Mr. Jen?
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, when we issue a building permit for a secondary suite, prior to us finalizing the permit or just closing it off, we require that the applicant also register the unit with us as well. With regards to the numbers, prior to after 2012, I believe that's when the registration bylaw, or 2012, the bylaw was changed so that existing secondary suites, those ones that predated the bylaw that were grandfathered, did not have to be registered. So
right.
That may account for the anomaly in the numbers.
Counselor?
Well, I'm pretty familiar with the online list now, and I would say that that's not what I'm looking at here. The question about the numbers that are on the online list and the number of the finalized permit, is that the same?
Through you again, Mr. Chair. It may very well be if a permit is issued in, let's say, a specific year, the number of registered units should match. But again, like I said earlier, some of the earlier ones may not match because of the fact that the grandfather ones did not have to be registered.
Thank you. And I'm not talking about the quantity here. I'm talking about these things have numbers. These homes and that need to be checked for safety. They're given numbers, and they're also given a registration number, and they're.
Counselor, excuse me, but your
I know.
time is up for your
And
first.
thank you, and I need to take a break anyway. Thanks.
Are there other comments? Counselor Gilliland, first time.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Jean. I just had a really quick question, and I know that you guys are still working on this and it's very preliminary. So I appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and hopefully we can make some strides moving forward to make this safer for our community. In respect to the permits that are outstanding, obviously you're making some development and making those changes, and just basing on one of your paragraphs, the building division has developed a strategy to attempt to inspect and close any outstanding building permits for secondary suites. where the applicant has not called for a final inspection if no inspection has been requested. It states here you guys are going to make an attempt, but do you have an established timeline for this proactive approach, or is that still in development? And you didn't really touch on the strategy. If you wouldn't mind, that would be great.
Mr. Jain.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. That's correct, Councillor. We haven't proactively been going and inspecting the ones that have been that have not been fully inspected. So what we will be doing is we will be instituting a policy where inspectors will be going out and inspecting the ones that haven't been done. I believe the report, there's been 24 that have not had finalized building permits, and I believe there's like 21 that have not been asked for finalized inspections, and 24 where there's been no inspections at all. Now, the 21 that have not had finalized inspections, I did review each one of them individually, and I did find that the majority of those, almost every one of them, was just they haven't called for a final. So the life safety features looks like they are in place, the fire separations, the egress, but they just haven't called for a final for us to go through and basically finalize it. So of the list of 24 out of 128, 19% of the properties that people have not asked for any inspections, which doesn't necessarily mean that none of the work has been done. It's just that means that they never called for the inspection. It also could mean that they've never even bothered to pursue putting the second unit in, but it also could mean that they did the work or they have somebody in there without doing the proper life safety issues. And we are developing a policy right to address that issue.
Councillor.
Thank you. Okay, that was my question. It was because it said develop, so I wanted to understand that. So you are currently reaching out to ascertain whether or not the status of construction to finalize it, but in the meantime or in the interim, you are developing a policy revision to bring back to council in respect to the second part of my motion to be more proactive on these things. Is that part of that? Is that why?
Mr. Jain.
Through you again, Mr. Chair, that report will be written by our bylaw enforcement division, and I did speak with the manager of bylaw enforcement today, and we did just set up a time in the future for us to get together and discuss it. And so, yes, those issues, your motion and this motion do interact or are associated, whereas your motion, Councillor, is with regards to more property standards types of issues, whereas this motion was dealt with how we would deal with secondary suites and proactively or provide strategies in ensuring that the secondary suites are deemed safe.
Councillor.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess for clarity then, are you developing any sort of sunset clause of sorts to say after you have a permit for a secondary suite, after 6 months, was it an internal staff policy or how you structure after 6 months, you proactively would follow up to get the status, or like at what point is it going to make that trigger? So I don't want this to become kind of like, oh, after reviewing this, 2 years from now, we realized we have some of these units that haven't had a look at. So is this something that's going to be a continuous trigger that we review that comes out like with a sunset clause, like every 6 months or something?
Mr. Jain.
Through you again, Mr. Chair. No, the policy will be to there's no sunset clause. It would be just continuous inspection or attempts to gain access to the building. As Councillor Gartner had alluded to, the one I dealt with her on, it took I think we've been dealing with that one for almost 2 years now. And it was after constant phone calls and attempts to reach the owners. We did, after it took 2 years, but we did access the building, and we did gain compliance with regards to the unit. Now, the one in particular, the issue was the owner could not get the tenant to move out, and the tenant would refuse access to us. So those are factors that take into account as well.
Thank you.
Counselor?
Just through Mr. Chair to Mr. Jean. So just to help me understand. So I'm a homeowner and I get a permit and I'm going to do a secondary suite. Tomorrow I get my permit approved. At which point does the building department decide to call me to check in to see if I've actually built my secondary suite?
Mr. Jean?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Our strategy is that if you were to apply for a building permit and we review it, and it's once we've issued the permit, we will, or at the same time that we issue the permit, we would contact the owner and attempt to and have a pre-construction meeting, meet with them on site, go over the minimum code requirements, and at that point, the inspector and the homeowner or the applicant can make arrangements on inspections and when they can come back to a finalized inspection. So that's one of our strategies that we're proposing for new building permits for secondary suites.
Counselor?
Thank you. I guess my only comment out loud is just that I feel and I sense like we do have a process in place, but yet we haven't really established a timeline. So unless somebody has a complaint and when they realize something's going on and they want to make sure that it's safe, I think that's kind of, the policy we're following. I'm not saying that we're not doing our job and we're not trying to make sure we're closing these accounts. That's not what I'm saying, but there seems to be no established timeline other than on relying on the goodwill of the person, so to speak, to contact the town for that final inspection. So I guess through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Ramuno, I would just like to see some sort of, natural follow-up after a certain amount of time after that inspection and that, that communication with that resident. And if nothing has been done proactively, we would just call to say, hey, it's been 6 months, haven't heard from you. Are you ready to sign off for inspection? And just do our due diligence as opposed to waiting.
Is that a question?
Mr.
Jean?
Ramuno. Mr.
Mr.
Ramuno.
Jean? Or Mr. Ramuno?
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. No, certainly, Councilor Gillian, in my discussion with the CEO, I mean, that's the intent, specifically, especially with the outstanding 20-odd permits that haven't been finalized. Our inspectors are going to be proactive and contact the owner to see what the status of the build and trying to encourage completion. As we've also heard, and I think Bill's mentioned in the report, there are some instances where the owners or tenants do deny the right for inspector to enter the building, and that causes a challenge. But again, our intent here is to close up as many of these files as we can and be proactive with our inspections.
Counselor?
Thank you. And I'm sure there's unforeseen circumstances, and I appreciate that. And some people do deny, and it's just more or less making sure we're doing our due diligence and saying that, you know what, we're going to follow up, and that's the best that we can do, at least within the powers that we have, and then what we can do. Thanks.
Thank you. No further questions? Counselor Gallo?
Thank you. I didn't really want to extend this discussion, but it popped the question. Is there a stopgap between issuing a permit, doing that initial, consultation, they go off and they're supposed to do their construction, and for whatever reason it goes off the tracks? Is there a stopgap between getting a final inspection, making sure everything is done right, and then they can lease out their space as a secondary dwelling? they need to register to a certain degree. So there must be something in between there that they have to get that final permit before they can proceed to lease out to somebody. I'm not sure who that would be.
Mr. Remua?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and Bill can jump in. And that's the way the process should work, obviously, until they get their final, inspection, occupancy inspection. They shouldn't be, occupying the space or leasing it out. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. And that's when we get into the sort of the enforcement strategy.
And what we're trying to establish is a frequency of inspection or a re-inspection follow-up, so that we can confirm the status of the unit. Otherwise, we're relying on complaints from neighbors that it's being occupied. I mean, how they wouldn't even really know whether the building process is complete or not, the neighbors, unless, for some reason they found out. So we're trying to mitigate someone complaining and getting it to a stage where the space may be unsafe for a secondary suite because they haven't concluded the whole construction process and closed that loop.
Thank you. Councillor Gartner, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Going back to or following on what Councilor Gallo just said, when somebody applies for a building permit for a second suite, we have a comprehensive bylaw about what has to be done. And it is in the house that I was speaking about, there was a building permit that was issued, and it was never checked to see what was being done. In the meantime, there was a person in the basement without a second way to get out. So I would like to know, I believe we have an obligation and a responsibility to, if somebody applies for a building permit for a second suite, that we need to be there. We need to see what they're doing. And I don't think we have to wait till they ask us. I think that that's something we can do by right. So am I correct on that or not?
Mr. Jane?
Through you, Mr. Chair. With regards to the issue of us gaining access and performing inspections, the statistics that I've reviewed, in fact, since 2013, of all the permits that were issued, 128, 83 of them have been completed and finalized. Another 21 of them has been inspected but not finalized. So the rate, the percentage that we don't gain access is in my opinion very small. Now, of course, there's always going to be some ones that we will not be able to gain access, and there is a potential for a fire issue. But based on the statistics that I've researched, the gaining compliance and for us inspecting and at least inspecting the major fire safety issues have been done, and these are stats that I've compiled from 2013.
Thank you.
Councillor Gartner?
Thank you. And that leaves 6% that are problematic or could be problematic. And we're dealing with safety. We're dealing with people's lives. We're dealing with potentially town liability. So there needs to be a way to close that gap. 6% is too high. If I could just ask you, that house that we were talking about, that home we were talking about, I believe you said that the tenant was no longer there, and therefore the problem basically went away. Is that what you said, or more or less? In your own words, sorry.
Through you again, Mr. Chair. In that particular case, the life safety issues were in place. Not 100% of them. I recall the building inspector told me the fire separations around the furnace were not in place, but the separations for the exits were in place. The smoke alarms were in place, as well as there was an egress window. So having a non-compliant fire rated furnace room, yes, that is a safety issue, but in my opinion, not one that would be very, very serious. And that was discovered after the tenant had left. We had gained access to the building through the owner and through a building inspection.
Okay.
If I may, could I just interrupt for a moment? And
Yeah.
we could just in the, because of time, rather
Yeah.
than go through individual circumstances, we could be here for a long time. I'd like to not to go through individual circumstances that we may have seen or heard. So if you don't mind. Councilor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But the reason that this is before us tonight is because of very few individual circumstances that I had the misfortune perhaps to be involved with. And I would just say, to close the loop, I would like Mr. Jean to be able to assure me, my understanding is the tenant is still there. So I would like Mr. Jean or Mr. Muno to assure me that that is not the case. And going back to the list, I wasn't being comprehensible. So we have two lists. We have the online list that has X number of properties on it. And then we have the list in this report. They don't agree with each other, and it's not just in one case. So I think that we need to have something like an Excel spreadsheet so that we really can track this, and that council can know, the public can know. The lists have to relate to each other. They just can't be two lists, and there they are, and that's the way it is. So I guess that's all for me right now, Mr. Chair. I think I'm not, this is a receipt for information. I'm not pleased with the information received. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Jean. No further questions or comments. Let me call a vote to receive. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We're past 9 o'clock, so our normal recess time of 2 hours, and we have 3 more items that we have to deal with. So I think we, 2 plus a notice. Do we prefer to move forward, or do you want to take a recess? Let's take a recess. 10 minutes, back at 20 after. Thank you. No. We're in recess for 10. Council, we're back in session. And we're picking up at 9.3. The Recreation Culture Grant and Sponsorship, Community Events and Programs Policy Refresh. Can I get a motion to put it on the floor? Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Gallo. Comments? Councillor Gilliland.
Thank you. I'm so glad this finally came to fruition to outline this policy and make it a little bit more streamlined. So I appreciate the hard work that you guys had put into it because I think we're asking for that. My only question is there was some, you had a chart here with area concerns and some recommendation updates. And everything looks great with the exception. The only concern I have with the change is the very first one about doing the intake deadlines. And my concern is if, there is some seasonal, trends to where more things may occur in warmer months versus the winter. And also what if planning on any of these events could change and because they don't coincide with at the time when they're trying to plan. And if we're only going to take so many in certain months, it just could really eliminate that opportunity. I do see that you have here with your application process, some of the recommended updates to allow other staff to assist you in the process. So perhaps maybe that'll alleviate some of that bottlenecking and just kind of allow that open first come first serve basis to continue. Is that something that you could reconsider?
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly the team of Lisa Worth and Phil Rose had through their research preparing this report and take that as comment and feedback as they go forward. I'm not sure if they have today a particular comment or response to that and what they had heard, what the rationale was to put the intake in place versus leaving it wide open. I'm not sure if they wish to add something to that.
Mr. Rose.
You're not okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council, through you, Mr. Chair. So the question was basically why we went to 4 intakes versus just a rotational or just I think it was kind of the opposite of what you were saying, which is basically we didn't want organizations that might be hosting something at the end of any given year to miss out. So for example, if we have 2 intake deadlines and we spend all the money, say by June, then there might be an organization that, perhaps, might just, be at a disadvantage because they have an event that's in November. So we were trying to make sure that with the 4 intake deadlines, we had as much parity, in the funding as possible. With that being said, we're basing all of our assessments on the merits of every application that comes in. So if it does happen that, we do have 10 applications that come in and they're all great, and we decide as a team that, the merits of funding, then we would probably approve them regardless. And if it does so happen that, the funding isn't available at the end of the year, then that might be the case. But we just wanted to be able to try to actually put specific deadlines out there for the community to be aware. I think also from a promotion perspective, we realized that there hasn't been a lot of sort of proactive promotion of the grant. And so we thought if we had specific deadlines and we can actually have targeted campaigns around those times to raise awareness. And it's probably more difficult to do that continuously throughout the year rather than actually at specific times that we've earmarked in the calendar.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair to Mr. Phil Rose. So if, an organization at the last minute, and I know this has happened, all of a sudden, they catch wind of, whether they're communicating with the counselor, someone in the community that knows a counselor or this department and says, hey, did you know you can get this grant from the town of Aurora, really help you out? It's last minute and it's a great organization. They contact you and they go, oh, well, I'm sorry, you've missed this intake. It's going to have to wait now. Is that a situation that could happen? And that, I'm trying to avoid those situations happening, especially if, for education's sake, like you said, a lot of people don't know they exist. And so I almost want to keep that door open.
Mr. Rose.
Through Mr. Chair. Yeah, that is a scenario that could happen. We've debated, going back about whether or not we keep it as a, ongoing open application deadline. And we just thought because there was 4, we originally actually were going to just do 2, but then we thought if there was 4, there with the gaps between, if there is an organization or individual that comes forward and they missed the last deadline, there wouldn't be that much of a, that long to wait for the next deadline. However, again, if council decides that we would rather have, that ongoing, one of our conversations was, do we continue as an ongoing application deadline? And then after maybe running the program for a year or two, we do an assessment and we try to figure out where, and we'll be, reporting to council biannually on, the grants that we provide. But we could do, an ongoing application deadline after 2 years, do an assessment and just find out where the peaks of applications are coming in. And then if we decide that, most of them are coming in before June, then we could, assess that as we wish, but we're certainly open to whatever feedback council provides.
Counselor?
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair, I really like the idea of, the ongoing and making that assessment and seeing where there's peaks and ebbs and flows. So you can make that assertion whether or not that is something that we need to change if there is that pressure. Since we don't have that data and maybe perhaps with the education that you are going to launch and the staff support that you have as well, it'll show some other change. And also because we are collaborating and putting things all together, that could change the dynamics of it too. So if you're open to that and your staff's open to that and maybe keeping it on a first come first basis, just for assess it for a year or two and see how that is, and then maybe present back what you're suggesting.
Mr. Rose?
Through Mr. Chair, I think we can speak on behalf of we're fine with that. And again, our goal is to try to get as much money in the, the hands of the community groups as possible to support the initiatives that they're doing for the community. So if you think that's the best, I think we kind of agree. So happy with that.
Great. Well, thank you. If that's something you could consider, I would really appreciate it. Thanks.
Further comments, questions? Seeing none. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I do agree too about the condensing of the two. So it's great. My real question really has to do with the second recommended change, whereby in the past, applicants can only receive funding for a maximum of 3 years out of the 5. You're now proposing that there is no limitation. Organizations can apply year after year. I think in those cases where we see a perpetual application year after year, and you can define whatever those criteria is, that there needs to be some sort of enhanced level of accountability. We've talked about it last night a little bit with regards to community groups coming forward. So in the one program we have, they have to provide financial statements. When it comes to sponsorship, there's less financial accountability about the organization, more about their planning and budget. So maybe there is a continuity there whereby organizations that apply year after year and get any funding from the town, they're either providing financial statements or copies of their tax returns or something that provides a little bit of accountability and legitimacy to their ongoing requests, and that way provides some degree of assurances to both staff as well as council about that the money is being well utilized. I'll leave it to you to work out the details when you come back and provide it, but I think that obviously if organizations are putting forth initiatives year after year, they're probably a non-for-profit or they have charitable status. And so there is some documentation that goes along with it. And I think that needs to be provided as well.
That's it.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of comments. Several years ago, I recall a young person came to council and asked for funding for educational program, and it caught us off guard, if you recall, and so it really put council in a position that it shouldn't be in. And so I remember requesting staff to relook this funding model. And upon reading this report, it says the maximum funding amount is 10,000 and requests over 10,000 require special funding and must be approved by council. So again, it's coming back to council and now for a larger amount. And I can see how that can become quite political in nature. And again, we don't want to be put in a situation where we have to make that decision. So I think the objective of this from a council perspective is, at least my perspective, is that it's out of the hands of council, and there's strict criteria in here so that the right people or the people who need the funds get it. So that's my one comment. This program, and the other is it says only applicants seeking more than 500 need to submit a written application form to be considered. So if I take that verbatim, it seems that applicants don't really need to put in much effort to request for funding for under 500. Is that what it's saying? That the requirement is greater for over 500?
Mr. Rose, Ms. Yes. Yep. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So for an amount of funding that's so little, there would need to be some sort of application process just for accounting and transparency. But it would likely be a different sort of process than a request that is over $500. We haven't fleshed that out exactly what that looks like, but we don't want to make it so difficult for someone who's only asking for such a small amount. And it doesn't make sense to have the same application process as someone who's asking for several $1,000s, but there will be some documentation. We have to have that again for accounting and transparency.
Sure.
Thanks, Ms. Worth.
And just to add to Councillor Thompson's comment about accountability, somewhere in this report I read about there's currently no, the town doesn't ask for receipts or any sense of how you spent the money. And so certainly that piece has to be worked out as well. Because especially, regardless of whether it's $300 or $10,000, we do need some kind of accountability. Well, those are the comments, but otherwise I'm in full support of combining the two funding programs.
Thank you. Ms. McDougall.
If you don't mind, thank you very much. I touched it again, sorry. For clarification on your initial comment, Councillor Kim, on the 10,000 and wishing to keep the approvals within the program versus coming to council. I just want to clarify if you're suggesting then it be an open-ended consideration, provided there's merit in the evaluation or the value rather. Or is council more comfortable if the maximum is 10 and keeping it at 10? And then there just isn't another option. If I'm making myself clear, I just want to make sure we're managing within the parameters council wants us to. And so we just want to make sure we're clear on what you're suggesting.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. McDougall, I think that's a good option because when I read the report, I was uncomfortable with 10,000. It's not like the program is, has a huge balance. So, my preference is something south of like 5, no more than 5. I'm not sure how others feel, but I think 10,000 for one grant is excessive. I think no more than 5 is more reasonable and shouldn't have to come to council.
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if that's the will of council, that ultimately is the threshold you wish to put on this program, that's what we'll work with.
Councillor Gartner.
Thank you. I'm also uncomfortable with the $10,000. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. McDougall, is that I know we've set aside some funds for Black History Month. I'm assuming that this is outside of what we're discussing right now.
Ms. McDougall.
Through Mr. Chair, yes, this is the original, that report was an interim measure that came to council with the understanding that ultimately an ask of that nature of support would ultimately go through the path or the program of what we're proposing today. So that wasn't an interim measure, but it was also, without knowing the basis yet of the criteria of need, the ask of 10,000 was just give us some room. There's more information to be fed back to council of how we facilitated that. The use of those funds council endorsed for us, but ultimately this program is separate. That was a one-time initiative the council supported out of a reserve, in fact, where this is an annual out of operating.
Thank you. So, and so further in that context, I think even $5,000 is a lot of money. I'm certainly not comfortable with 10. I can't say that I'm particularly comfortable with 5. I would like it to be lower. I'd like it to be somewhere around 3,000. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Thank you. My comment on this is because I've done a number of grants. When we get into those higher numbers, we start looking not only that there are receipts, as Councillor Kim was talking about, but also that there are deliverables that are measured in terms of impact in the community, because we're spending money either on sponsorship, usually on sponsorship. And so having some measure of deliverable and impact would also be something I think is valuable and it'd serve us well by knowing that money was being spent is also being spent. It's being spent in the right places, but we're also getting the impact from them. And based upon that impact, they may or may not be eligible for future grants and sponsorships. Just a comment. Councillor Gartner, your hand is still up there. Is it indeed up or is it just a ghost?
It's just being naughty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No further questions? May call a vote then? All in favor? Oh, sorry. Councillor Gillen.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up on some of the questions about the amount and the threshold and everything like that. For me, initially, it was really not an alarm. I just assumed that we were combining a lot of these grants together that may have events that were somewhere really small scale, may only require $500 to run a run, like a Terry Fox run versus maybe a much larger event. And I'm assuming, and maybe you can make some clarity through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. McDougall or Mr. Phil Rose or Ms. Worth about the variety of different granting requests we'll get because you are combining. Does that make it different? Maybe you can explain why the threshold is set where you decided.
Mr. Rose or Ms. Worth?
Through Mr. Chair, I can try to take this one. Partly because we were combining the threshold that we had for the Recreation and Culture Grant was $1,000, and it has been for a number of years. The combination of including the sponsorship one that was administered by Communications, they had a $10,000 threshold. Again, I don't think they ever, over the course of the last couple of years, they ever came close to allocating $10,000 of funding. I think 4,000 around was probably the highest. So I think in terms of the $10,000, we just adopted what was the maximum. It was the most recent policy that was approved by council. I think it was in 2019. So we thought because it was relatively recently, there was some scrutiny by council at that point. So we adopted the $10,000. But again, our premise or our understanding is that it'd be a very rare circumstance where $10,000 is awarded to one organization, given the diversity of different applications are going to come in. I imagine that we're probably not going to get many more than 5,000. But again, if we're advertising 10,000, then of course there's going to be some organizations out there. I do know, for example, that there's a couple applications that were approved from last year that are carried forward for 2023 funding, and they're both from a local organization, and they're about $4,000 each. So I don't really have any hindsight in not having administered the communication sponsorship policy. I don't know exactly why 10,000 was chosen at that point in time, but I think anywhere between 5,000 and 10,000, with again the caveat that anything over or around 5,000, even up to 10,000, would be a very rare circumstance for us, and have to be very, great policy or great application and great initiative that they're proposing to get funding for. Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Worth?
Yeah, I'll just add something to that. With this new program, we do intend to use a scoring rubric, which we haven't used in the past. So that should allow us to get a good sense of the funding request and the impact it's going to have. So the way it gets scored and what we anticipate the impact to be and the strength of the application will all come into play when we score the project. So that, like, as I said, that should help give us a good sense of the request versus the value, the impact, the output sort of thing. So there's that piece of reassurance as well.
Thank you.
Thank
Counselor?
you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I really appreciate the clarity there. You know, I'm comfortable at the 10 that you guys have put forward. We did approve, like you said, in 2019. It sounds like you have a rubric. I did read you to have a rubrics in place, and maybe within that thought process, you know, when you know you're considering anything over 5,000, that maybe there are deliverables that are included in that. As to Councillor Weiss's remarks, that you know is a requirement and part of that rubrics, and it kind of gives some accountability to it. Sorry, did you want to speak to it? Okay, thanks.
Mr. Rose.
Sorry to interrupt through you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that there will be, so a final report will be mandatory for all, whether it's five. So I was going to say, even though the $500, we're not going to have a very, you know, robust application process. Every applicant will have to do some kind of final report. Once you get past the $500 threshold, that report will become, again, more exhaustive, and KPIs will be something that we're looking for. We're trying to tie the program to the strat plan and some of the objectives of the municipalities. We want to make sure that the impact that they've said they're going to have is actually what they've committed to and what they've delivered on. So we will have a final report, and that final report, if organizations don't complete the final report and submit it, then they will be ineligible for future funding until that final report is submitted.
Councillor?
A follow-up question to that, actually. Just because the one thing I did read through Mr. Chair about the $500 the minimum threshold, was it just brings me back to, say, for example, the Terry Fox Run, which is, you know, as far as like a town usage, it's you're literally using a trail, but yet there's fees involved for, I think, garbage, and I think it's just garbage. I think that's what it is, just in case. But I think those fees amounted to, might have been between $500 and $1,000. So as far as like when you say KPIs and deliverables on a run, I just don't want to make it too onerous for something that's so simple and for the intent and the principle to raise money in our town for Terry Fox Run. I would just hope that there'd be some rubrics around that when you're talking about an organization that's just really there for a good cause with very minimal impact. The expectation is not really meant to, you know, that KPI you're looking for, I think is a little different in that and unique in that sense. So I was hoping that maybe you could shed some light on at least understanding maybe those exceptions.
Mr. Rose?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So there is a number of deliverables that we put in the report that we're going to be coming back with. One, of course, is the policy that's going to be the framework for the program itself, but we will have that rubric that Lisa talked about. We will have a template of the final report, the communication plan. So when we return to council at some point in the near future, we'll be able to have what the final report looks like, and we'll likely, and we've made the note to differentiate what the $500 report will look like, which is likely, you know, just prove that you've spent it on the money that, you know, you said you're going to prove it on. Or spend it on, I should say. And then again, the other final reports for the higher values will be something different, but we'll return to council with that information.
Councillor?
Perfect. Thanks so much.
No further questions or comments? We call a vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item is 9.4, debt management policy. Can I get a mover for this and a seconder? Councillor Thompson and Councillor Kim. Questions, comments? Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just a couple questions. The policy is putting in place, as described, a self-imposed ARL limit of 10% of own source revenue. Is that common amongst other municipalities through you, Mr. Chair?
Ms. Wainwright, Castle.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it's not common for municipalities to necessarily self-impose. So the annual repayment limit is the amount of principal and interest, we repay it on an annual basis. 10% is still a significant amount. And as you can see from the chart in the report, even 10% is not something I were going to get close to. The only other municipality in this area that would have something different is York Region. They have a special act in relation to their ARL because of development and growth. But for most municipalities, it's based on 25% of the own source. But I think we should keep it much lower.
And through, Mr. Chair, is that a net amount? Mr. Chair, let's see, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair.
Three to Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that is the amount that we'd actually spend on principal and interest in the year. So it's the gross spending. It's not netted against anything.
But through, is it 10% of the net?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the own source income includes essentially things such as water rates, tax levy, user fees and things like that, but not development charges.
Councillor.
Okay. On page 148 of our report, under Aurora debt repayment limit and framework for debt management, on page number 4 on page 148, it says when the debt is fully repaid on an asset, excluding development charges funded debt, the debt service cost in the operating should be converted to an asset management reserve contribution to support future asset management needs. So am I to understand that once the debt is fully paid off, the servicing costs, maybe you can describe what the servicing costs are for you, Mr. Chair, we continue those and put them into a reserve?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. So the servicing cost is the principal and interest, the amount that we're allocating in our budget on an annual basis. Instead of paying principal and interest, we then take it and allocate it to asset management reserves.
And what is the strategy behind that? Through you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that is part of the fiscal strategy. The fiscal strategy identified this as an opportunity to increase our contributions to asset management as we pay off debt. Typically, debt is associated with the acquisition of new assets, and then this ends up supporting the longer term obligations on that asset for asset renewal and replacement.
Councillor.
And through you, no matter what the amount is, because some debt is obviously going to be larger than other debt, and the servicing costs are going to be different.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So a lot of the debt we have is funded through things such as development charges. So that would not be an example. An example of the type of debt would be, for example, the LED light replacement that's coming to an end in 2026. And there's some other, the Aurora Town Square debt, eventually when we pay that off in many years from now, that would then convert to an asset management contribution as well.
Councillor.
Just on the chart, it shows the LED conversion. It shows the, I guess that's the only one. The other ones are from DCs. But there could be, well, actually the Aurora Sports Dome purchase, that's, my point is the values of those are going to be different depending on how it's funded. Some funded through DC, some not. And we just, regardless of that, we take whatever that servicing cost is and we put it into a reserve.
Ms. Wainwright.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the DC debt has a net zero impact on our tax levy. So that's why that would not be converted to an asset management reserve. It's only the ones that are tax funded debt repayment costs that we could convert, because that's already built into our tax levy.
I understand. My question is that amount is going to be maybe different based on the project. The non-DC funded amount, the dome is 1.6 million. I have a question about that, but and regardless, there's going to be other ones that are going to be a different amount. No matter what that amount is, we still take that servicing fee and we put it into a reserve.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that would be correct. So whatever that servicing fee would be, once the debt's paid off, the recommendation is that we allocate it to reserve.
So it just feels like
Counselor?
we're continuously paying a debt forever, no matter what the cost of that particular asset was or the debt that we incurred. Anyways, I have some issues with that, and maybe I'm not completely understanding or the impact of that. Is this something new through Mr. Chair, or have we been doing it for?
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, is this new?
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So this is new in our policy. We didn't have a debt management policy beforehand. The reason for this is really because after that asset is paid for, we need to start turning our attention to the asset management obligations that we have for that asset. Typically, debt is issued for larger assets that the town has. And we for example, like the Aurora Town Square, it's a major asset that we're investing in. So the idea is that in the future, we will then be able to help with our asset management obligations. Under the asset management plan that was presented in last term of council, you could see there are obligations under that, like how much we're going to need in reserves. We're seriously underfunded. And also, this is in alignment with the principles that we had in the fiscal strategy.
Counselor.
So this is new. Once this policy is in place, this will start. I just feel like it's somewhat arbitrary because, you know, I don't disagree with the concept of putting money into a reserve for an asset for its replacement. It's just there should be some strategy behind that based on the asset, not necessarily based on our servicing the debt of that asset, because depending on how we funded it is going to vary, doesn't necessarily equal what it will cost us to eventually replace that asset or whatever needs to be done to that asset that reserve fund is made for. It seems a little arbitrary to me, but we'll leave it as it is, and I'll put some more thought to it.
Like a response?
It's just some more strategy behind it. It feels like this goes in. If we approve with this, it feels like we're, no matter when we've paid for the library or the SARC soon. I don't know if those DC funded or fits into this category, but we'll continue paying for it based on whatever the cost of the servicing that debt that we had incurred all along. That's it for me.
Counselor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel, for stewarding our finance team. We've been, the last several years, we've been very prudent, and over the last decade, we've been very prudent, and so we want to thank you and the team for all your efforts and giving us prudent and conservative policies. And I'm certainly in favor of keeping the 10% annual repayment limit. That's prudent. If we've had this conversation many times, that the current strategy of investing in our reserves, and I think it's indicated in the report that we had a ROI of 2.7 or 2.9% return, and our cost of the loans were 2.1 or thereabouts, and so it's a good strategy. It's served us well thus far. Another reason for municipalities, and ours no different, for taking on debt, a good case is that it helps us to spread out the costs of a venue project over its useful life, and allows infrastructure costs to be paid not just by today's taxpayer, but future ones as well. So from an equity perspective, it makes sense. Thank you for the prudent policies you've given us, and I'll be in support of the item here.
Counselor Gilliland.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Wainwright Bencastle, just following up on what Councillor Gallo had asked you in regards to the asset management. Is that intended in perpetuity, or is there like an intention to achieve like a certain number of like a year of operating, or is there some timeline involved?
Ms. Wainwright Bencastle.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So for example, of the outstanding debt we have right now, there are only three projects that are not DC funded. So that's the Aurora Sports Dome, the LED, and then the Aurora Town Square. So with those, when they are completed, the idea is we take that and we push that over to asset management contributions. The recent work that we did on the asset management plan indicated that at this point in time, based on the analysis so far, we should be contributing 2.9% of our levy increase each year. I believe it was the next 10 or 20 years. I'd have to look that up. So this is a way for us to be able to start contributing more to asset management without having to go and increase the tax levy even further, because it's already been built into the base, which is part of the strategy behind why we do this. We look at a lot of these other assets that we have on here with debt. Most of them are funded for development charges. So once their debt is paid off, it's just paid off, and that's when it ends, because it's not an impact on the tax levy. That would still have to be generated through asset management contributions in another manner, which would be likely tax increases over time as well. As we go on, so when we look at it in perpetuity, the asset management obligations are going to become more refined as we go through the next stages of the asset management plan. And that in the future, we're going to get to hopefully that steady state where we can look at what do we really need going forward. And the increases may not be as much. Like right now, we're looking at a 1% increase on an annual basis. Once you get to a steady state and that self-sufficiency, it might change. It could decrease, or it could be adjusted in other ways. But the intent for the converting it to an asset management contribution in particular was because, yes, this is for assets that we're working on. It doesn't necessarily pay for all of the assets for debt financing, because most of them are DC funded, but then it gives us an opportunity to increase asset management contributions without increasing the tax levy. And for the LED streetlight conversion, that was part of the analysis we did for the budget. We assumed that those contributions converted in 2026 for a 10-year capital plan that we proposed.
Thank you. Councillor.
Thank you. So from what I'm hearing is that it's there obviously for protection, because you're saying about the DC charge and such, but if we wanted to make an assessment and say, okay, we need to make a cut, we've got enough in the reserves, we're okay, and that's somewhere where we could make a change in the policy if we felt at that particular time and moment that that was a place that we could maybe make those changes.
Ms. Wainwright Bencastle.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So at this point in time, it makes sense to be putting more towards asset management, which is why this is there. In the future, that could change. It depends on what our future obligations are for asset management and how well funded we are in our reserves and what our strategy is for servicing our assets and what our service levels are. And more of that is going to get shaped in the asset management plan. At some point in the future, if we decide, okay, we don't need to do this, we can change the policy at that time.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. And so I guess at that point, I mean, it's something that's a review, you'll review, and that'll be an assessment at that time. I just don't want to look at it. It's like, oh, this is an instant thing all the time. And perhaps, I don't know if it's every year you would do it, every 2 years, every 3 years, but at least to relook and kind of see, is this something we need to continue doing at this time? And I just want to make sure that flexibility is there, but also that proactive approach and what that looks like, what that proactive timeline looks like. I don't know what you recommend, but I'm okay with it if that's the case.
Ms. Wainwright Bencastle.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So at the end of the policy indicates that the policy must be reviewed every 2 years.
Okay,
Thank you.
then great, thanks.
Councillor. Councillor Gardner.
Thank you. I give you my thanks as well, Ms. Wainwright Bencastle, for steering us so well these last years. Following on Councillor Gallo's comments, if we have something like the town square, we are talking about a huge amount of money. Well, I guess it's all relative, but to me it's huge. So is the thinking that the corresponding requirement to upkeep this asset and potentially one day rebuild it warrants that huge amount of money going in to asset management once there no longer is any debt.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So in the Aurora Town Square, the tax funded portion that will be debt financed is 7.5 million of the total project value. So it's a significant portion of the project, but the project is much higher value than that. We have in the operating budget around $510,000 annually for the repayment of tax funded debt. So we are looking at potentially a 20-year debenture. So I'm assuming most of the faces around the table will be very different at that time. And hopefully we are in a very well-funded manner for our assets by that point in time.
Thank you, Councillor.
I'm not sure you answered my question. Well, even at 7.5 million, I really can't look forward to the future or have anything to draw on right now. But that actually, we may actually need that amount of money for a project as large as the town square. It may even be underfunded, but that would be the goal, to try and ensure that that asset is maintained and repaired, and if required, replaced, and that we would then have the money for that.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the 7.5 million is the total value of the long-term debenture we'd be looking at. The principal and interest repayments, about 510,000 a year is what we've got built into our budget. So that's the annual amount that we have, and that's just a little bit shy of 1% of our tax levy. But even then, there's going to be asset management activities that are going to happen within that 20 years before the Aurora Town Square debt would be paid off. There's pieces of the asset that just don't last that long.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Between now and council, Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel can provide a little bit more detail about the value of continuing this process versus not doing it, to help members of council better understand why she's recommending doing so, and also perhaps some real examples. But I think perhaps one of the challenges that Councillor Gallo was trying to explain is that, you may end up paying for this project well beyond its sort of life cycle. So for example, the LED streetlight conversion, if it takes us 10 years to pay off the debt, but the life cycle of this asset is 25 years, and we continue that process of paying, then you've paid for it more than double. And so I think just provide a little bit more details to all of council between now and our council meeting at the end of the month, to explain the rationale behind doing this and the implications of not doing it. Because certainly, as we all know, we have a significant value associated with our assets, and the repair and replacement is going to be a challenge on an ongoing basis. And we need to continue to increase our reserves in that respect. And this is one strategy, but I'm sure that council would appreciate some more details around why we're choosing this avenue. So through you to Mrs. Wainwright Van Kessel, is that something you could provide to council between now and the 28th? 31st.
Ms. Wainwright Van Kessel.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can provide additional information, but I'm not saying that the money would actually go to that specific asset, but to our tax-funded asset management obligations as a whole.
Sure. More details, the better.
Thank you. Councillor Gallo.
Thank you. Just a last question about short-term, long-term financing. I didn't see in here any guidelines as to length of time that we would consider a particular financing debt. Looks like most of them are 20 years, but it doesn't say that there's a limit. And is there value to having that, perhaps, other than maybe land purchases might be longer, but other than that, is there value to having like a 20-year limit on any maximum 20-year limit on any debt financing and other than maybe land a little longer through you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Wainwright, Castle.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So through the actual legislation under how we can borrow, there are limits to the length of term of the debentures that we can, or the long-term debt that we can take on. The limit is a lesser of 40 years or the life of the asset, so the term of the asset in which it would be amortized over. So typically at the town, we do not exceed anything more than 20 years.
Councillor.
So my question is the value in putting that, describing that into the policy?
Ms. Wainwright, Castle.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we could put that into the policy. It just makes some challenges on an amortization term in a period of high interest rates. So amortization is one of the flexible pieces in a term of high interest rates. But again, you still have to stay within that amortization period of the asset, which is why most of our assets are 20 years or less.
Sorry, most of our assets, the debt financing of them, not the life cycle, but the debt financing of them. I'd like to kind of see that. I'd like to see something in there on outer level, even for council. If obviously, if there's a project that comes forward and it requires more than 20 years of financing, I hate to see it, but it's possible. Then council obviously can override this and make that decision. But I'd like to see an outer end, at least some thought to putting an outer end to that.
Ms. Wainwright, Castle, possible?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So all debt financing does have to get approved by council, and we indicate the term of the debt financing in that approval report. So that is part of it. We could add into the policy that debt should not exceed 20 years without council approval. But at the same time, all debt does get approved by council.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I'll leave it up to you.
Thank you. No more questions, comments? We call the vote then. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Next item is a notice of motion from Councillor Gilliland. This will be discussed on the 31st, so it's the notice. 11, there's no regional report. So let's move along to new business. Mayor Maracus. Item of new business.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'd like to put forward a motion from our delegates that came in today from the Barbarians. So I just want staff to investigate. So I was thinking the staff review and investigate the proposal from the Aurora Barbarians Rugby Football Club and report back to council with options and recommendations.
Seconder. Councillor Thompson.
Mr. Chair, I don't think there's really much to add other than the fact that I'm sure that when we get this back, we'll have a long, lengthy discussion about how we move forward.
Certainly. Let's call a vote. All in favor? Opposed? None? Carried. Thank you. Anyone else with new business they want to bring forward? Hearing, seeing none? Oh, Councillor. Oh, Councillor Gillen, sorry. Mine's on yours.
No worries. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. McDougall, I understand that you will be sending a report. I know that we've had some email conversations in behind the scenes, but if all of council could receive a report on the initiatives that we are doing for Black History Month, that would be great. Is there any way we could get this within the next week? So at least we kind of can anticipate it before the month.
Ms. McDougall.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, I know Phil has already been working on that summary, and we'll be happy to send an email to council to summarize the actions and what we've how we are working with the Black History Month initiatives.
Great. Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson. Councillor Gallo.
Sorry, just on the subject of Black history. There's going to be some events, and I guess our council meeting is not until the 31st. So but February 1st, there's the town hall virtual flag racing. February 3rd, it's a Black history celebration, celebrating Black excellence. And the 17th is paint and poetry night, and the 27th, Cineplex Theater Black Excellence Film. And there's probably a few more in between there that I've missed, but you can go on to the Black History Community website and find out more details. So hope everyone's going to do their best to participate and spread the word of these events.
Thank you. Councillor Kim. Okay. Councillor Gartner.
Nothing, thank you.
My only item has to do with the circulation of what was circulated about the chairs of the various GCs that are coming forward. And I'm wondering if we can't have that posted somewhere on the website so people know what's happening and when. So just a comment about that. Yeah, there was a chart that went around that identified who's chairing what meetings at what time throughout the 4-year term. So I just want that to be put on our website so it's available to the public. Yes. Councillor Gallo.
Sorry, maybe this is new business, but you reminded me of something in terms of the deputy mayor's position and just some communication on is it Councillor Weiss right now until he's done his shift, and then it moves on to, I guess it goes down the line. Is that what's happening?
Sure. Yeah, that's a discussion that I mean, right now the only decision about a deputy mayor is that they're going to be chairing a general committee meeting and nothing else. So I think there's some work that needs to be done on what that deputy mayor position actually means in terms of participating in events that perhaps the mayor can't participate in because he's indisposed for some reason. And it's not just the chairing of this committee. Is that your suggestion?
That as well as just to understand who it is and when it is, and just to verify that it's now you until it moves to Councillor Yoland and so on.
Yeah, and that was the purpose of the chart that I saw, is it's being identified month by month, which council member was going to be considered the deputy mayor for the purposes of general committee. But I'm making an assumption that chairing the committee is only one part of being the deputy mayor in case there's a reason that the mayor is not able to do his duties for whatever the reasons are. But it's not clear, and perhaps we need some clarity on that. Mr. Duron?
Excuse me, through you, Mr. Chair. Happy to provide some clarity to council. You are correct. It's generally about the chairing of the GC meeting. Another example would be that when the mayor has a motion in a council meeting, he would pass the chair to the deputy mayor at that time. But yeah, we can certainly provide some clarification.
Thank you. Any PSAs that we have? We heard about Black History Month, et cetera, but Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to keep it short. As was mentioned about Black History Month, also, if anyone wants to find any more information as well, they can also visit the town site, aurora.ca /Black History Month. I know that we've been working with our community partners in developing our town page as well to coordinate with them and have links that go to their individual pages as well. So it's an easy way for residents to be able to find out what's going on, but also get linked up to our community partners as well. this Saturday, January 21st. Don't miss the mayor and council New Year's levy. It's a great opportunity to come out and meet all of us. I hope all of us will be there. 10 a.m. at the SARC. It's lots of activities going on: skating, face painting, bubble show, swimming, and actually a lot more. And throw in the fact that I believe there's a delicious cake there as well. So residents will be able to partake in some cake, and it's a great opportunity for our residents to be able to have conversations with us and meet us in in one of our facilities, and just enjoy the new year and have a great time all together. So looking forward to seeing everyone there. And if anyone wants more information, they can visit aurora.ca/levy. Also, actually on Saturday, if you're looking to safely dispose of old or unwanted electronics, you can join us for the first of 3 e-waste collection events at the Joint Operations Center. And for more information, you can visit aurora.ca/e-waste days. And that's it, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Gillen.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chair, there's a few events that are going on in town. I always like to shine a little light on the Aurora Cultural Center. They have some live shows that are going on. January 21st, 27th, and February 11th are the next upcoming shows. So definitely check those out. As always, Hillary House is there. It has display on inspiration of healing, partnership with the Cultural Center on this display, both at Hillary House and Town Hall on the 3rd floor. And Theatre Aurora has live show, live performance going on right now, January to February. So check that out as well. And there's a youth art show at Rose's Art Gallery on the 29th, showcasing some youth and one of the high schools between 1 and 3. And I think it's a great opportunity to view some art from some of the young talent in our region. And for a lot of art stuff going on. York Region Art Council is having a program initiative Zoom on January 18th. And it's an opportunity for people in York Region who want to give their input, share ideas, and support for their program initiatives. It is a reach out to the community to kind of communicate with the stakeholders about the York Region Art Council. So definitely some great stuff there. And as far as getting back to the things in January, I know there's a lot of people that are thinking, let's go to the gym. And I know I'm one of them. And check out the winter program guide. I'm sure there's back to the gym schedule and everything available, and signing up for new programs and camps around the corner. So check out the release guide that was released, I think, in December. Finally, I think there was one last thing, and I can't find it. Oh, it's probably more appropriate new business. I apologize, but I thought that perhaps through Mr. Chair to whatever staff could answer, Mr. Downey's not here. If there's any updates on outdoor skating rinks, I know online it said updates soon because the weather was so crummy. Has there been any change with that? And I don't know who could answer, but that would be great.
I think Mr. Downey is online.
Oh, great.
Mr. Downey?
Yep. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So through you, Mr. Chair, the ice rinks are not up and operational at this point. We've had only 2 days of cold weather, and unfortunately, this week we've had rain and we'll have above zero weather. So the rinks will not be up and operational. Next week, the weather is predicted to go into double digit below zero. And that should bring us the ability to get the rings up and operational. But unfortunately, the weather has not cooperated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dan. I appreciate it. That's all. Thanks.
Councilor Gardner. Mute. There we go.
Sorry, I'm coughing, so I was on mute. I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Thompson. Councilor Gallo. Councilor Kim. Okay, nothing more, nothing from me either. Motion to adjourn. Councilor Thompson, Councilor Gallo, second, all in favor? Carried. We're finished. Uh,